Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Mike Sapone, can you hear me?
Morning. Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. Very good. Mike Minetti, I see you're on mute. I sent you an audio pin. So you should be able to enter that and log in. So, Mike, just as a update from yesterday, we talked with Laura Shepis during the Strategic Advisory Council meeting, and three things came up with that. One is she wants to she wants to work this use case, which I think is really good, and the products that come out of this, she thinks the CEO is going to be very interested in. And basically, we'll figure out what those products are. But one of the first products is how do we build a directory of state contacts that handle disaster, cyber, social media, and election systems. Could be an interesting database. So that was one piece. The second piece was she wants to stay close to the Institute idea. She said that the joint investment of her CEOs is a central topic. So, and then she had some recommendations on maybe some projects that we look at going forward. So anyway, it was very she felt very productive about it. She wants to stay close to this effort. So I wanted to let you know that from
I don't blame her, and I think the attention it'll get at the top with that group can only improve the participation in these companies, and with that level of participation comes ideas, direction, all that great stuff comes from those. So that's a great start. Very happy to hear it.
And the other outcome, Dave Vanderblomen, good morning. Mike Minetti, good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
The other outcome was Bob Kowalski from DHS mentioned that he wanted the SISE to consider setting up a transition work group to help him align research at the federal level with use cases going on in the private sector and the states. He said getting the states to use the technology is his number one driver, and the states don't want new technology unless it's going to connect them to the private sector. So we're in a unique position.
Where we always thought we'd end up.
Well, it's kind of funny, but here we are. So that's one of the outcomes that we'll talk about with the board quickly, and I think establishing that committee will be important to look at what use case do we have now, what technology is available, and how can we align those groups. So good stuff. Morning, Gene Shear. I see you're muted, so I sent you a pin. You can unmute. Hey, Mike, Kent's here from Verizon. We were talking about the storms that just happened. Were they kind of a derecho-like behavior to you? I know they were down here.
The one on the 17th was classified, so to speak, as a bomb cyclone, and what that means is it tends to be a more slow-moving system that tends to build strength before it hits, and that's kind of what happened with that 17th storm. I haven't read much forensics, if you will, about this past event, the Halloween event, but certainly it was more straight line winds than it was, and that's more indicative of the signature of a derecho, but certainly not. I don't know that it'll be classified that way, Tom. But I'll certainly share any forensic reports that we get out of it. But it wasn't a bomb cyclone, So in other words, it wasn't like the knockout punch. This was strong winds over a long duration of time.
I
So
gotcha. Okay.
the
Yeah.
other ones tend to be much shorter in duration.
Well,
The derecho and the bomb cyclone.
I got it. Well, I've lived in my house for 30 years. I haven't seen wind like that ever. I was fully expecting trees to be down on top of my house.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We got a lot of folks running late. Yeah, a little thin.
I'm here, Tom. How you doing?
Oh, hey, Persia. Good morning. I didn't see you on the dial in here. Sorry.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning, Persia.
Laura's not here yet, and we'll give it another minute, a couple of minutes, I guess. Good morning. You want me to slide my stuff down? You want to sit on the end? Okay. Okay, that works. Yeah. Persia, you on?
Yeah,
Oh, there you are. I see you. Okay. Good. Okay, Laura's here. And, hey, Pat, how you doing? Good. Pat, have you met John? All right. Look. Laura's here, and I say we just rock. Huh? Yep. I say we just go ahead and start. People are still coming in, Persia, but we get rocking here. Okay, very good. So thanks again for everyone who came yesterday, and I heard sorry I was in and out throughout the day. A lot of good conversation yesterday. We had good representation from states, either on the phone or here. Good federal agency representation, and of course our members here and on the phone. Just want to welcome everyone. There's breakfast if you want to partake in some breakfast. And also wanted to hand it over to Jennifer McKinney, who will give our safety/security welcome as well. And Jennifer, thank you.
All right. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. I know it's not a lot of us.
Morning.
So I'm here, as Chris said, to do an overview of our emergency procedures. In the event we are required to evacuate the building, there are two exits that are close to this conference room. The first exit is located to my left through the glass door and to the right. You follow the exit signs and proceed down the stairwell. The stairwell will lead you behind the building onto D Street. The second exit is to the left of the receptionist desk and across from the ladies' room. This stairwell will lead you to the 7th Street side of the building. Once outside, we ask that you proceed to the designated assembly area, which is across 7th Street at the Temperance Memorial. Please do not attempt to use the elevator or re-enter the building until you are instructed it is safe to do so. If a threat comes from the outside, we may ask you to shelter in place with EI staff so that you do not go towards the danger. Your meeting host and our team of floor wardens will provide additional instructions if necessary. In case of an earthquake, like the one in August of 2011, please take cover under the table, clasp your hands, and use them to cover, protect your neck, and hold. We also have staff that have been trained in CPR and the use of an AED. There are 2 AEDs located close to this conference room. One is in our wellness room, which is through the security door to the left of the catering kitchen, and the other one is located in the kitchen next to Michael Faraday conference room on this floor, which is to the left of the receptionist desk. Lastly, and most important, the locations of the restrooms. The men's room is located outside the glass door down the hallway, the first door on your right, and the ladies' room is to the left of the receptionist desk, the first door on your right. They are kept unlocked for your convenience. And again, on behalf of the Internal Services Department, I want to welcome you again to EI. And if there's anything else that we can do to make your stay more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. All right, let me close this down. Welcome, everyone. First up, we'll do some introductions. We'll start on the GoToWebinar, and then we'll go around the room, and then we can dive into our agenda. So let me just start first. I'll make sure everybody's mic is on. Carla Gammon, welcome from FEMA Logistics. You want to introduce yourself and your role, please?
Thanks, Tom. Carla Gammon. I work FEMA Logistics, and I also work in the National Response Coordination Center. Thank you.
It was great to see you yesterday. I know today you can't be here in person. Thank you for coming yesterday. It was great. Dave Vanderbloemen?
Hi, good morning, Tom. Dave Vanderbloemen, formerly Dominion Energy, Emergency Preparedness, retired November 1st, but still trying to remain active with all hazards to the point I can be a good contributor.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Doug Baker?
Morning, Tom and everybody. Doug Baker with FMI. I'm part of the industry relations team over here working with Chad on technology and preparedness activities.
Very good. Gene Shear?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I work for Carla Gammon and Jeff Dorco as their supply chain advisor here at FEMA. Thank you.
Okay, great, very good. Mike Zappone?
Good morning, everyone. Mike Zappone, Eversource Energy EP Manager, Emergency Preparedness Manager, Logistics, also co-chair of the Fleet Working Group here at the All Hazards.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Mike. Mike Minetti?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Minetti, and I'm the Security and Emergency Management Program Manager for the Golden Triangle Business Improvement District. We're in between the White House and DuPont Circle, and we run from about 16th Street Northwest to 21st Street Northwest.
Very good. Jim Nowak?
Yes, Jim Nowak, the Senior Director for ARCOS over the Operations Product and Services Group, previously with American Electric Power, and been with the All Hazards since around 2012 or somewhere in that time frame.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. Persia Payne-Hurley?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Persia Payne-Hurley. I'm the Private Sector Manager and Business Emergency Operations Center Coordinator for State of North Carolina. I also administer the reentry certification program for our state.
Okay, very good. So we'll just go around the room here. Kent, I'll start with you, and your name, organization, and role, and we'll go around the room.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Tildow. I'm the Director of Business Continuity and Emergency Management at Verizon, and I also have the honor of being the co-chair of the SISE Working Committee.
Okay. Greg?
Greg McShane, DHS CISA Integrated Operations Division, formerly known as the National Infrastructure Coordinating Center, NICC.
Okay, great. Okay.
Chad Ross, Manager of Industry Relations at the Food Marketing Institute. Along with Doug Baker, we handle our crisis continuity for our food retail members.
And Chad, your members are who? If you could
Our
just talk
members consist of food retailers, but primarily anyone that does everything with food. So retailers, manufacturers, independent operators, as well as your companies that want to do business with the food retail industry.
Okay. Farm, from the farm to the plate kind of thing?
Everything.
Everybody.
Feeding
Okay.
families, enriching lives.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Laura?
I'm wishing I had a great slogan like feeding families, enriching lives, but I'm Laura.
It is a great slogan.
And Laura Sheffis with EEI, with the ESCC team, the Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council.
Pat Hart, also with EEI and a member of the ESCC Secretariat with Laura.
Okay. Very good.
And I am John Molnar. I'm the Director of the Program Management Office for the All Hazards Consortium.
Okay. And I want to say hi to Karen Moe. Karen, if you didn't introduce yourself, good to see you joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Karen Moe with the Earth Science Information Partners.
Okay. Let's see. Did I miss anyone? Okay. So those of you that need Wi-Fi, I assume you found it. So I have that up on the screen. You folks remotely don't need to worry about that one here. So first up, let's jump into our agenda. I wanted to first invite just some opening remarks. Chris Eisenbray provided remarks welcoming to EEI. Beautiful facility for those who haven't been here. We really appreciate them letting us utilize all and sometimes or some part and sometimes all of this beautiful conference room. So thank you very much. I wanted to invite our work group chairs to provide comment, and then I would ask Laura and Persia to provide some opening remarks. So Mike Zappone, I'll start with you. Mike is the chair of the Fleet Response Working Group. So Mike, you were there yesterday. Today we're going to hit a use case and get into it a little bit. Just some opening remarks, if you wouldn't mind.
No problem, Tom. Obviously welcoming everyone to the meeting, wishing I could be there, but could not. As I said yesterday, the busier times when it comes to storm restoration is recovery and afterwards, and so it's kept me here, but don't want to fool anybody about the importance of exactly what we're doing here. Yesterday was a fantastic discussion around the all hazards, a great refresher for those that have been around for a while, but certainly for new people, and we're always encouraging new people to find out more. It was a great eye opener into the different initiatives that are going on with this group, and some of the dare to venture into attitudes that are driving it. So always happy to be a part of it and part of the discussion, always learning something new from the people. We had comments from a lot of our leaders yesterday, and the feedback seems to be very positive on where people see this is going. And again, the leveraging of great minds and scientists to resolve and produce the data, some of which they already have, but simply don't know how to bring it to the people that can leverage it best or understand the data they need and how they need to leverage it. The combination of the two is certainly a force to be reckoned with when it comes to not only we as a nation, I'll say, or as a people preparing for events, but also in how we get into restoring and assisting one another. And then obviously the recovery of standing together based on the fact that both the preparation phase and the restoration phase were a true joint effort of both operational people and operationally minded scientists, if you will, who are helping us use the best data available to make the quickest and most meaningful decisions on the people who matter the most. And those people are not only the consumers or the customers of the private sector, but they are also the constituents, the same individuals living in the same communities with the same infrastructure, all of this fertile common ground that these constituents of the public sector reside in. We owe it to them to work together and bring field the best possible team with the best possible playbook that can be produced to both prepare and execute in times of disaster, and to do so not the first time we get together, but in the worst time, because we've taken the time to prepare and understand how we need to work together to get that accomplished. I think I maybe summed up a little too much of yesterday, but certainly you hopefully you share that same passion I do for where this group needs to go, and it takes three legs on the stool. It's the federal participation, it is the state participation, and it is the private sector participation that I consider the three legs of the stool. And the All Hazards Consortium has proven to be the one forum that I've seen, and I've seen many try this, but seems to be producing the trusted environment necessary to bring these three powerful machines together to maximize performance. So welcome. I know yesterday was a great discussion. Today's a little bit of a shorter day, but no less important, or I hope exhausting, as all of you put your energies into these use cases.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, Kent Kildow is the chair of our SISE working group. Kent?
Well, thank you, Tom. I was sitting here thinking about my accounting class in college, and you're probably saying, what is the connection? Well, probably almost none, because I don't remember anything from my accounting curriculum except for one thing. And on the opening day, our instructor said, there is always value in having information, and there is always a cost to having that information as well. And the thing that really excites me about the SISE is the ability to operationalize information requirements and to lower the cost of having operational information that can inform decisions and help accelerate recovery after events. And I think that is, I know it's exciting to me, and I know that from an operations perspective, for those engaged in emergency management, both in the public and the private sector, it is an appealing effort that's going on here. The thing that does also, I think, is of great value here is the laser focus on trying to operationalize the use of data as well. And we've all been engaged in forums where there's a lot of great discussion, but it never really moves past the discussion phase. And I think that what we're seeing with the work being done here is truly starting to operationalize those things and making informed data available to people who can use it to affect their operations. So, Tom, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you do to support those efforts, and looking forward to today's discussions.
Okay. Thank you, Kent. Next up, we have our folks you'll be hearing a lot from today, Laura Shepis and Persia Payne-Hurley. So, Persia, I'm going to invite you to provide comment before we start here, kind of opening remarks. You have certainly spent a lot of time talking with me and Laura about this, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to set the stage before we dive in.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Tom. I just, I have to echo Mike's opinion. I wish I was there, and I'm so sorry that I cannot be. In North Carolina, as you guys can imagine, we're learning what it's like to recover from back-to-back events that are, far-reaching and impacting a lot of people, and that's taking quite a bit of time. But I want you to know that it's my honor to be involved in this group and in All Hazards Consortium. I absolutely adore finding solutions. I think it's on my most favorite things list. I'm excited to talk about action and planning and the kind of steps that stretch our capabilities to handle catastrophes. And what I mean by catastrophes are threats that are absolutely beyond our capabilities where we sit right now. That's the kind of thing that keeps me going, keeps me awake at night. The questions of how can we be better, what's stopping us from moving forward. These are the kind of thoughts that I typically have, and I think we should all be considering that every day, or at least as long as we can push things to the line. So with that, I'm going to say let's push the envelope towards great things, and that's really all I've got to say, Tom.
Okay, Laura, let me give you the opportunity. Certainly, we met I think a month and a half ago or something like that, and then all of a sudden here we are. So
I'm excited about action and operationalizing as well. At the electricity subsector coordinating council, we operate with 30 CEOs at this very strategic level, and that certainly has a great role, great importance. But the other 350 days a year, as I like to say, we are responsible at the senior staff level for making small steps every day to make the industry better prepared. And I think I mentioned yesterday our fairly recent initiative at the strategic level to get more involved in the states. So today's discussion and next year's hoped for exercise will be a very tangible step in that direction. Yes, there are multiple exercises. People from all walks of life and critical infrastructure can come to the table and be at an exercise, but I think a lot of the national ones do not draw in enough participation from the states, and I'm excited from the electric side to be able to help design one. Now, I'm just like the pastry chef here, right? Putting a little icing on here and there. Persia, with her expertise, is baking the cake, and Pat Hart here with me, with his DOE and FEMA background, is helping bake the cake as well. So, Tom, let's get in the kitchen.
Okay, very good. So, as always, we're going to use a online facilitation tool called MindMeister. Persia and I have been populating that. Those of you that want to have access to it can as well. This is a way to crowdsource information and education and training. So rather than killing everybody with PowerPoints, Persia and I decided we just kind of use it up, and I'll show you how this works. But the idea is to create this tool. This will be our planning tool going forward. You can print it, you can organize it, it creates its own slides. It's called MindMeister. It's free. You can create 3 maps on your own. You do the paid version, it's like under $100, I think, and it's a fantastic tool because it shows, in our world, we have to do interactive, we got to show multiple things, multiple connections. It's hard to do with words, so we use pictures. So important first step. So today we'll have our, we'll get through our opening remarks. We'll jump into our purpose and overview. Next session 2, we'll talk about our scenario and impacts discussion and participants and desired outcomes at 11, and then wrap up. So first thing I wanted to let people understand is this is a function, and we're doing it under the SISE. The SISE work group committee is running the effort. So we take the heat, the liability, all that stuff, and provide protection for all of the players. So we keep this information private. It's very important in the private sector. We protect them from FOIA, non-operational requests, and so forth. So for those who don't know, what is the SISE? The SISE is a framework legally that allows states to work together with the private sector. It's not a system, it's a framework, a legal framework. And what we do is, I'll show you very quickly, it's important people understand this concept. And I'm going to give you the training here in really quick here. So we start with vetted individuals. And you're going to get vetted today if you're not registered with the SISE. It's free. You'll see the process. We start with those people, so we know they're the right people. They're vetted through the SISE, and from there, they develop, use cases or solve problems. So a use case is a problem being worked on. So we have a process for that. Then we do another one, then we do another one, and we keep creating use cases. And out of that, we come out with solutions in many forms, and the solution part is never ending. There are apps, there are playbooks and processes, dashboards, third-party sites, partnerships, applied research. The sites can do a lot of pieces. We don't create those solutions, we find them. So as we take on a use case, we ask everybody to register with the SISE. So if you go to siseusa.org, takes about 3 minutes. You'll be vetted, and that means you'll be on the list to get future information about this specific use case. SISEUSA.org. If you haven't done it, I invite you to do it now. You can do it from a phone or a laptop or anything you want. So this is our first, I think, Kent, our first cyber use case. You and I talked about this almost a year ago, doing something with cyber. Greg and I have been talking about this. About, how long ago was it, Laura, we met downstairs? Was it about 6 weeks ago? Laura and I spoke about the consortium forming a kind of an applied research institute. We looked at some potential projects for that, and both Pat, I think, and Laura and the group said, you know, we really would like to do something with social media, handling negative or rumors or things like that. The election hack came up from a cyber standpoint with Persia and others talking about it, and then we've kind of been shaping this whole thing. But the big idea is, how do we coordinate industry and states right of boom from a cyber scenario? So I'm gonna invite Persia to provide just some background for this. But as we get into our first session, one of the things we want to look at is the driver for this needs to be really laser focused, because these will scale out. When we bring public and private together, it's always interesting when you're doing tabletop exercises, because the private sector's like, let's do 1, 2, 3 and be done. And when we work many times with FEMA and our federal agencies, they have a process for this, very good, right? HCEP and the compliance. We have to work in this world of, no, we're going to do 20 steps. So this is not going to be HCEP guided, I think, for today, this exercise. But down the road, we want to make sure that we touch on the pieces the states, the industry folks need to have in it. But the purpose of this today is to be planning the framework for this. So Persia, I'm going to let you open up real quick on kind of the backdrop, some of the, what did you call them? You called them the themes, overarching themes, and I'll pull up the mind map because you and I went through this already. But I'll turn it over to you and we can just look at some of the assumptions and some of the background themes.
Yeah, you guys.
There's quite a few.
Tom is so good with this mind map. I'm looking at it too. You could really start anywhere. That's the cool thing about it. The assumptions that we made, and we got into this exercise, by the way, because we saw a tendency for folks to lean on a lot of regarding cyber, to lean left of boom. Everything was in preparation and left of boom, and we weren't really dealing with right of boom. And we saw that as a gap. What are we going to do about that? Because if that day comes and so on and so forth, the thing that was noticeable right away was what we needed to do to bring government into that kind of scenario. Now, and let me explain. If there is a huge cyber attack, any of you can imagine this, and it happened in any of your industries, government would not get involved in that until such time that there were impacts to the public or to government itself, period. Otherwise, they would be monitoring. That is just the way this would happen. So we dealt with that, monitoring, watching, recording, collecting information. This is really what government would be doing. It would be an observer, not involved in it directly. So until such time that there were cascading effects. So just right of boom, we have government as an observer. Well, I didn't like that very much, and others didn't either. How do we pull government into this exercise? So the idea came to create a situation where government was in the middle of it, and that's why you're going to see with our scenario that we looked at this election scenario very much like what happened with Hurricane Sandy. So these focuses, these things are what came out of it. Right of boom issues. We wanted to also get away from finger pointing. So we didn't want to look so much as who is responsible on the right of boom, because that seems to be a little bit of a shortfall. But how do we then combat that, set up defenses, next steps, without really getting into the liability of it. And I know that's a little bit tricky. So who's responsible? Sure, that's going to be a question, and there's all this forensic cyber stuff that's going on. But we're more concerned with what are our immediate actions to shore it up and stop problems and to prevent cascading effects. So we're not interested in getting people in trouble. We're not interested in trade secrets and, who's liable, who has exposure. And those are things that we're going to have to deal with in the creation as we go through this design. So the way I look at this is that, and I think others agree, cyber event really is a private sector event because of what I just mentioned. Government is not directly involved until government is involved, and that means the public is involved. So it is a private sector event really up until that point, in as much as it impacts government being able to function. So, this is scary stuff. I get it, and I know that you guys are tough enough to pursue it with me, pursue it with us, because it has to be done. So how do we avoid panic? These are questions, and there are others, but I guess the main thing is, how do we get government and private sector working together in a large enough cyber attack, cyber event, right, a boom, that is going to lay out some guidelines on how we need to take steps in the response and then into the recovery.
So Persia, question. From your perspective, why don't more states participate in some of the federal exercises around, cyber or some of the larger disaster management? I don't want to say they all don't, but from your perspective, what are some of the challenges that they don't participate in GridX, for example?
Well, we participate in GridX, but I'm sure there are a lot of reasons why. If it's strictly an electric exercise, I'm sure a number of them are participating. But I think when it gets into the cyber side, a lot of states have identified particular areas. I don't want to call them divisions. I guess they get departments, sections that strictly handle cyber, and everybody else is pretty hands off. So it's kind of an area where they don't really like to tread very often. It's something that, the National Guard is handling it because they have a cyber unit, or that other group over there in ISEX is handling it, and other folks kind of stay out of it until there are cascading events that they can kind of handle head on in the traditional way.
Okay, thank you. Laura, I wanted to go back to the key themes. You had mentioned this before. We captured, I think it's important as people take this, whether virtually they're participating or, I don't want to miss any of the key themes that we're trying to cover here, but that was one you asked, is how come more states aren't plugging into GridX? And they're all over the map with their interest. Do we miss any, or do we want anyone else want to chime in? Laura, I wanted to give you first comment. I'm sorry, you got to get really close to the mic because they won't be able to hear you on the bridge. Thank you.
Pat's going to dive in and talk about GridX because he's been around them more than I have. And then I want to ask a follow-up question of Persia and any others who may know, do states come and sort of visit these exercises, maybe participate by going to the EOC, but not really dive in? That's my sense, but I don't know if that's accurate.
Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges we have with GridX is, let me preface it by saying that GridX is the marquee exercise for our sector. It is fantastic. The NERC and the ISAC team do it.
Yeah, can you closer to the mic? Thank you.
Outstanding job putting that together. The one challenge that you have with that exercise, though, it is designed to be something that the NERC and the ISAC hand over. They provide a lot of materials that companies can use to develop their own scenarios. So what happens is that you have multiple different exercises taking place with different scenarios based on the bottom line scenario that NERC and the ISAC develops, which is fantastic, but it allows for customization. So it creates a little bit of a challenge if you want to bring multiple entities together to play that exercise. We run into this when we do the ESCC portion of the exercise. I mean, it's not a huge hurdle, but we can get over it. So it's a matter of planning way in advance that you would want to line up scenarios from multiple different companies and with the states, et cetera. So again, fantastic exercise. We learn a lot from it. It just takes a lot of planning up front to align those scenarios for different entities.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to comment? Yeah, yeah. Try to get as close to the mic as you can, folks, so they can capture you in the way. Go ahead, John.
I'm just wondering, and I don't know if GridX is a 8-seat compliant exercise, Pat. I don't know if GridX is a 8-seat compliant exercise or not. It probably is not. Persia, I was just wondering, because it's not 8-seat compliant, does that stop any of the states from participating because they can't get funding for that and have that paid for, the travel and stuff, or does that not have anything to do with the participation?
No, so you're talking about coming directly into, like, traveling rather than doing it virtually.
Well, the whole the time spent on the participation, anything that the state would need, yes. I was just wondering if money had anything to do with not participating.
I would say that it's definitely got a partial responsibility there, because there's going to be they've got to make decisions. A lot of us have to make decisions on what we're going to attend and how many people and that kind of thing. So certainly money is going to play a role.
So you have money, and then my other part of the question was, if it's not 8-seat compliant, does that affect the state's decision in participating or not?
That's a tougher one. I think that one's. I think there's too many variables there to for me to answer for all of the states. I'm sorry about that, but I do think that some of them are going to point to that as a possible problem. Those of us on this side of the country that get hit a lot more often, that might not be an exception for us.
So let's just say for this TTX, the minute you do a TTX, many minds go to many pictures, right? And we want to answer that question before we ever come out of the gate. What this is not, okay? And we do 8-seat compliant exercise, but there's many pieces to jump through. I don't think that's going to work here today. A year from now, that might change. Chris, comment? I'm doing this as a way these key themes are to set the stage mentally for people that are coming to this for the first time, and so we manage their expectations, and I think it's an important discussion before we start. Chris, go ahead.
This is a question for Persia. Back in my day at the Virginia Emergency Operations Center.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself and your role?
Chris McIntosh, Venture Solutions. Back in my day when I was the Chief Operations at the EOC, and I'm not 100% sure whether or not this is still the case, which is why I'm asking Persia. There was a statute that every year the Commonwealth of Virginia had to conduct a statewide exercise, and the only requirement was that it dealt with a statewide or a large-scale power outage. Now, there's lots of ways to generate the power outage. It could be a hurricane, it could be a cyber attack, it could be a derecho, who knows what. But the requirement was the power outage, which meant the exercise was not about the cause, it was about the effect, the power being out. So I think when you're pulling this together, we have to separate the exercise, the cyber component of the exercise, from the emergency that the EOCs are dealing with, which is the power's out. So Persia, I don't know, are you getting lots of exercises of various flavors where you're really, from an EOC response standpoint, dealing with the same emergency, which is the power outage, and less concerned about the costs? Well, a hurricane power outage, a cyber power outage, power's still out. You still need to get generators to people, all of that kind of thing. So my viewpoint on that is a little dated, but I'm just wondering if that's changed.
I'm going to try to answer. I'll tell you what I've noticed, Chris, and that is, especially in the last few years, that exercises tend to be now focused on function, if that makes sense. So, for instance, exercising an evacuation plan, or exercising a mass care plan, or, in this case, power restoration. It can be focused on fuel. So it seems to be now a bit more leaning more towards function, and that might be a matter of what we've learned in the last few years, rather than everything is going to be, if that's making sense to you. So if it's a evacuation plan, it's exercise, but they want to focus on, say, an evacuation plan, everything is going to be focused on how we work out, stretch, push our current evacuation plan and evaluate that. And if that includes power outage and, whatever threat and mass care and, then it does. And as many areas that can be involved will be pulled into that.
So it sounds like the specificity that you're looking for, Tom, is how is a cyber-generated power outage, how is the response to that by function different than some other generated power outage?
This is exactly why we want to have this first concept discussion, right? Because when you get into these... Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Just from my little bit of experience with it, and I think Chris is dead on. I believe that, I've been with the utility emergency response for my entire career, and we practice, we drill, but we're always assuming that all of our processes internally are running as designed. We're just looking for ways to make them better. Cyber is a whole different animal. Cyber is different in a manner because it has the potential to disrupt or impact your internal processes from assessment to recovery in every sector, whether it's from the governmental, whether it's voting machines, whether it's power, whether it's transportation, traffic signals. It's a great unknown. So I think in this event, that's why it intrigues me. From a cyber event, I think the number one thing that's going to be is what has happened, what's impacted, and has it been contained? And in order to do that, you need to know who is a cyber SME for each sector, who's running the governmental cyber detection process, who's running the utility for the utilities, who's running it for communications, and are they communicating? How do they contact each other? So if it's an issue within the utility sector, say it's disrupting our distribution management systems, how do we contact the folks that it's impacting to tell you that, hey, our restoration processes are now different. We can't use our automatic restoration stuff. We can't do our automatic detection. We need identified and contained. So I think building that tree of knowing who are our partners that we need to contact, the experts that can say, yes, we know what it is. We know that how to contain it. Then you can start building your recovery plans. But I think that understanding what's happened and knowing who to call within our partners, that's the key.
Okay. So the reason we wanted to start with this was because, and I think, Laura, I'll go back to our first meeting, one of the things that was the most interesting is the product we come out of this with. And that's our North Star. And what Dave just said, I think, regurgitates kind of the whole point of this. Our North Star should be what? That's what we define. Dave is proposing, and I agree, is what are the communication protocols, which means who are the people and how do we get them, right? There could be many, but otherwise, Chris, what you said, I've seen it happen every time you get in an exercise, it is diffused with great concerns, smart people, but next thing you know, you start with one, then two, then three, then you got 100 things you can work. So I think it's important for this group in the planning that we agree, what is the North Star here? What are we really shooting for? Dave is proffering communication protocols. I think that would be the simplest to do. There will be many other things down the road that will help come out of it. I'll guarantee you there'll be new policy introduced as we go forward. But connecting public and private is really important. I think it starts, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it starts with who are the people and what's the protocol they can talk back and forth to one another. So I'm just putting it on the table. Would love to hear everybody's comments.
I agree with you, and I think the most important part, what's going to make us be successful, is that we're all communicating the same message with many voices. So we don't have the utility against the finger pointing stuff. We're all talking. We have all the same information. We're all dealing with that same platform, and until you know who you're talking to, or who to talk to, you can't. It's hard to do that.
Okay.
And Tom, I think if I'm hearing this right, we're talking about end result, point of contacts, one voice. So I'll call it one voice. And the question I want to ask too, and kind of put this on our list, what do you guys need from government? I mean, that's a big thing that we're missing. what does private sector really need from us in this kind of a scenario? What can we do? I mean, we don't want to be in the way. We want to be support, but I don't think we're sure what we need to do. And I'm sure y'all are going to tell us. I mean, I want to come out of this with something that government can do better. What can we do to help this scenario?
Okay. Laura, comments?
Yeah, I love how this is going, and we're putting a lot of great stuff up on the board. I wonder if we might flip over into just a little bit of exercise parameters and talk about the who, what, where, and when. And I mean that from, do we want this to be, trying to keep it beautifully simple so that we can pinpoint where we need to add some complexity to get to the fantastic story that we are going to tell about this exercise in May when it's over. So for my linear brain, even just being able to say, okay, we're going to have this in North Carolina sometime in April. Is the exercise going to just focus on North Carolina in the scenario? We know we want it to be cyber and be really a tougher set of terrible events than I think a lot of exercises encompass, right? It's not just, oh, there was a hurricane, the power went out, not to minimize hurricanes, but in our last phone conversation, we dreamed up a pretty terrifying series of events. Tom, you mentioned as we were settling in, this is on a whiteboard, a virtual whiteboard, but it's already getting a ton of interest. Do we want to draw a border, not to be exclusive, but to be focused? Do we want to say, well, this is critical lifeline sectors? So I know what I selfishly, representing these CEOs, would like to focus on, which is the telecommunications and power nexus. I think to build on some of our work in GridX, the natural gas and power nexus. And then, again, selfishly, I want to have a wonderful demonstration of the common operating picture capabilities in the SISE so I can let our CEOs and utilities who don't already have religion get religion.
Right. Great. Just as a comment, we need a visual product for this to survive the test of, hey, great meeting. And then a month later, you can't remember how many great meetings you had last year. So I think we need a visual, right? Okay. This is a drawing on the screen. This is a drawing of the conversations Laura, you and Persia, Pat, myself have had. It's a macro view. Not all these people on the left. On the left are people, right? Industry, state, Fed, trades, ISACs, others. The scenario underneath the center, kind of use case, and the solutions on the right. This is kind of the macro. Now, you can't engage all these people at one time, right? So, and as I was talking with Persia, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Persia, it seems to me if we focused on the players here, the people actually we're zeroing in on are electric, okay? And we do planning through the SISE work group. In there we have electric, food, fuel. We've got several. But I think if we start with electric, right behind that will be food. We can decide which ones are there. And if we start small and simple, it'll get complicated on its own. It takes a lot of energy to keep it small and simple. But if you do small and simple, then you can plan the visuals, okay? Because there's optics to this, like you said, Laura, as much as there is real work. And the last thing I'll mention is on the right, solutions. There's a number of these solutions will come out of this, but it seems to be one of the first things we want to do in any use case is who are the people and how do I get hold of them? And so we can come out of this with a directory of each state that if we go state by state by state by state over a series of months, We want to come at us with a director who the people are, the key people to handle natural disaster, social media, IT, election system, whatever this exercise comes out at. Persia, I want you to chime in here on this. This is the complicated version of the graphic. We have a much simpler one, but I wanted to make sure I captured it. And any reaction you have for Laura's perspective.
No, I'm reading it, Tom. No, I think it's it's a little bit more complicated. We kind of, this thing started very simple and it's blue, it's so big. I do, but I think you captured all of it. In steps. It's scenario, it's people, it's processes, and then tools, solutions. So, no, I'm pretty happy with it. I think that Laura, I think I might have missed the memo that Laura was coming here to have lunch with me in April.
All right. Okay. So in this session then, we wanted to hit the background and assumptions. What's the long-term strategy? I think, Laura, you just kind of teed that up. What is the long-term strategy? We can talk about our scenario, goals, and objectives, and the desired outcome and products. So let me go back to the mind map for just a minute. This piece, background and assumptions, this is never ending. These are going to start and they're going to develop over time, but I think we've got most of those down. The reason I wanted to get into these assumptions was that this is how we message going forward, and we have to, when we communicate, hey, we'd like to invite you to this, right? Then a read ahead says, oh, by the way, this is what it is, and this is the outcome and the products, these are the people involved, this is the process we're going to use, and this is not what we're going to do, because otherwise you have a lot of people come in and they leave going, hey, that wasn't anything like what I expected because I didn't manage their expectations, right? We've just done this a lot with meetings and things like that. So that's our recommendation. So for sake of time, I regrouped under themes and concept. I regrouped, Persia, the concerns, right? We want to make sure we address these concerns going forward. How do we avoid public panic? I don't want to look bad or get people in trouble. I don't want to give up trade secrets or top secret information. Cyber is scary. I don't know what to do or who to call. What's my liability exposure in participating in this? And then the assumptions will grow. But I think a big one, Persia, I just want to wrap this piece up with is, from your standpoint, states are not going to engage in a cyber incident early enough to matter. By that, you're saying is by the time the states engage, it's already 3 days in and the destruction is horrible. Am I right?
Right. I mean, when I talk to you about this, Tom, that's exactly what I meant. If the cyber event happens, by the time the states get involved, cascading of this impacts would have had to have begun by then. And that's so late to the party that the response would be sluggish and, constantly running behind the impacts. We would be just chasing it down. We wouldn't have a very good impact, I think, in the response because of that. We're so late. And I mean, I don't know if you agrees with me.
Okay. Anyone comments to that, Greg?
Just in the approach, I think we're hitting on a lot of key points here, but I'm almost looking at this as kind of a cause and effect, and we know what the effect is, but we don't know exactly what the cause is. Obviously, a hurricane rolls in. Oh yeah, that impacted the critical infrastructure, those things. But in a cyber type event, even by just calling this a cyber event, we gave them the answer. So it's a kind of a process of elimination. You know it's been affected, but you don't know exactly what that cause is. So as part of the exercise, I think we kind of, we're looking at Right a Boom, but Right a Boom is also trying to figure out what caused that power outage. Did somebody hack into my industrial controls? Yeah. Did somebody, is it a ransomware type attack? Those types of things can kind of play in the exercise scenario. And if you kind of move the discovery part closer to the immediate Right a Boom, like, oh, it hit. We know it was part of the assumptions is, what do we want to rope this in with? Is it kind of is it a hurricane? Is it something else? So you're combination. So obviously you call it a cyber exercise, it's going to lead down to something cyber. So part of it is the discovery part,
Persia, maybe we ought to jump to the. Go ahead.
Hang on, I hear exactly what you're saying. I think if we could do that quickly. Our concern was we didn't want to slow the exercise down and get into a lot of forensics about the cause. I think if we could get to an immediate cause, or if it's already, if we can call that one of our planning assumptions, that we know that there's been this type of attack, maybe we can get around that way. Because I guess that's the concern. I mean, how long do you think that it would take for us to go through whatever processes, especially government? I mean, on the private side, you guys are going to be a lot faster on the forensics of what caused it, the root cause of this attack. And maybe where we're going to, Tom, is maybe we need to talk about the scenario so folks can kind of get an idea of the complexities and some of the possibilities.
Okay, I'm just drawing up on the whiteboard. Can you all see this? Oh.
So I think Greg brings up a good point, and it's in an exercise. This is a debate in every exercise I think I've ever been in, is how much do you want to prime the participants and how much do you want to make it like reality? So in reality, you're not going to know why the lights went out. Could be for a while. That's going to change the response. So we want to go down that road, but do you want to do it in a speed up the process so that people know ahead of time for the purpose of the exercise, or you want to see how they react when they don't know why the lights are out? I remember the derecho event in Virginia. First indication that we had a problem was a dispatcher said, "Hey, my phone hasn't rung for 20 minutes in the 911 center." And it took a good 6 hours for us to figure out what happened. And it was that a standby generator and a knock, I won't mention the telecom vendor, Kent, but was tagged out for maintenance.
He's out for coffee.
Yeah, he stepped out of the room. That's why I felt confident doing that. And then it was a cascading effect from a piece of infrastructure, but that could very easily have been a cyber incident. Yeah. We just don't know.
Right. So if I can, Chris, everybody, Persia drew this on a napkin on one of our weekend calls. Persia, why don't you take a minute? Let's walk through this. I think this will give perspective of the how and the what we're going to talk about. So if you can see this, Persia, on the screen. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I'll let you take it from here.
This scenario, guys, it can be broken down into 4 phases, but originally I just drew the arrows. Well, essentially it was, and this is up for grabs, and this is the way it would look. We were talking about a hurricane that would be on the way, and I picked the southeastern region just because I'm familiar with that group of states. But it also would be the Gulf State region, which would, different complications.
Yeah. And I think in the Northeast, we could do an ice storm, some kind of big, bad natural disaster. It's great. Go ahead. I just want to make sure we
it could be, it could be this, what do they call those snowstorms that are, I don't know, nor'easter. It could be any of that. So you've got that happening, and that may be on the way. And you also have an election pending. So the election is happening, the hurricane is on the way, and you can imagine what would we be doing? Well, government obviously would be focused on this election, and the EOCs would be prepping for this natural disaster. So we were talking about moving resources, activations, all of those things, tapping the private sector, checking with each other, hopefully communicating in preparation. Well, what we had hoped, as you can see at the bottom, the election becomes hacked. Now, when I said that, I'm sure there's some folks on here that are going to be, we can get into the nitty gritty of that, but let's just say you can't vote, can't count ballots, can't report back. So that causes a huge social media barrage of, I'm not going to call it fake news. Some of it might be true. So there's a huge social media barrage and aggravation. At the same time, the state of emergencies start to happen along those states because that hurricane is pending. So you've got state of emergencies, you've got movements of resources, evacuations, voluntary and mandatory, transportation waivers being issued, those types of things, and it's a huge distraction. And then landfall actually happens, coinciding with a cyber attack on the grid. Now, from a hurricane standpoint, you guys know how we have that landfall situation happen, and usually it's overnight. I don't know why hurricanes always seem to hit at night, but there's this period of time right after landfall. Nobody's moving. Everybody's hunkered down. Nothing's really happening. We have no assessments of damage, so we don't really know what all we're talking about, what all is happening in terms of counties are not reporting to the governments. Pretty much people are hunkered down. It's power companies that are typically watching what's happening. You guys are the experts. You guys are watching it while landfall is happening. So that cyber attack on the grid happens very soon after landfall. So government is responding to the hurricane event. Counties are responding, evacuations and all those kind of things. And power companies and their groups that are adjacent to them are responding to the cyber attack. And those cascading impacts, and we can build those into whatever we want, but we'll have so much social media panic by then. There'll be people that were not impacted by the hurricane that are now don't have power, the aggravation of why they don't have power, those Russia questions and everything else. So this can impact water, comms, transportation. I mean, there's a lot of implications here. Timing will be a thing, and I think we can work out what would be the best timing for the most impact. But the bottom line is we have distraction. We have government being brought into an event. We have normal processes on the government side in terms of declarations of emergency and communicating with whomever they normally would, with a social barrage of the election being hacked and the social media campaign happening to try to counteract that. With the landfall happening in the cyber attack on the grid, now the social media is going to turn to power sector and those adjacent industries.
Okay. Let me pause for a minute. I'm updating the drawing. First of all, I think it's freaking brilliant.
I'm sorry. I get so charged up.
This is great.
I'm very interested to see what folks think, and this might answer some questions. So on the one hand, we are looking at what would be kind of sort of a no-notice event on the cyber side, but the hurricane, obviously, or whatever event, that would be known. So we kind of have them going at the same time. But the distraction of responding to a known event, responding to a known event becomes a distraction for the cyber attack.
So let me jump in real quick. So Laura, Pat, and others, the reason we wanted the natural disaster is if our product is to produce a state guide of people, they will not engage in a cyber incident until it's too late. The exercise, to Persia's point, has to begin with a natural disaster because that's where the states are now engaged. We know the people, right? Which I thought was brilliant because we want to get multiple state declarations involved. That way we'll get intention from the states to play when we do this. I'm giving you a high level here, right? So if you look at this piece is all about getting the states to engage. Landfall's normal, states and private sector response. That's all stuff that your members, the state, they all know. And what we're adding here is this piece. This goes, Pat, to your point, is we're adding the social media piece here, and we can design what that is. And then, Laura, this is your piece, is the cyber attack happens. But the cyber attack happens when there's that quiet period waiting for landfall. You know that if you've been around disasters a lot, everybody gears up crazy, and then it goes dark. Nobody does anything, waiting for landfall, right? And then it all breaks out, okay? So if we, what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, in here we want to get the emergency managers. We got it. Here we want, who in every state handles the social media rumors and attacks for that? Is it IT? Is it governor's office? Do they even have one? Do they care? We don't know, right? Okay, cyber attack. Who is responsible for the cyber attack in Texas? Okay, in California, in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in Florida, in Ohio, in Chicago, and so forth. And by the way, I think we have to make sure we include cities and urban areas because they are their own states in a sense, right? So the scenario then makes all this happen, and this brings in what I call our three-legged stool: natural disaster, social media, cyber attack. Okay, comments?
I'm proud of the scenario. You know, the storyteller in me who after this tabletop exercise, I think the ESCC, federal partners, state partners, everybody can be proud to say, look, we took on the perfect storm scenario and we are upping our exercise game.
Yeah, this is Sandy, right?
Plus
with cyber attack and social media. Now, we were using social media during Sandy. We had a company doing that, for those of you who aren't aware. Cyvalence was the name of the company. They did it for the White House and the CIA. They've since been purchased. But during Sandy, they were watching social media. We got early warning and predictive on riots, looting. They saved a guy in his truck who was tweeting SOS, drowning. They pulled him out of at 2 a.m. They caught it on social media. They called state police and they got him out of there. And then there were shark fins. Someone had put a shark in the Toms River. Then the analyst said, "No, that's BS. That's not really true." All right, true story. Okay, so we had all this except the hacks, right? So it's not that far out. But I think, thank you first for going through that. I think this scenario gets the states engaged early, and we want them to declare. And here's why: because when the states declare, the emergency management has the point. And they can bring in the election people, they can bring in the comms and so they'll organize that. And I'll guarantee you not every state even knows who their people are that handle cyber. So it'll help the states. If Persia chime in or anyone else chime in if we're off base here. But
that would be true.
Okay.
Okay. So that having this scenario is re-cemented in my head is very, very helpful. I want to just ask something. You guys have said, oh, if we make it just a cyber exercise, the states won't come. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think they won't come. At least they won't engage soon enough.
Okay.
For our products we're trying to produce.
So the way we market this exercise is very important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Persia,
Laura,
chime
I
in.
think you got to ask. You need to ask, how involved do you want them to be? If it's a cyber exercise, and I think that primarily what they would then be doing in states is monitoring and watching and collecting information and monitoring and watching, not feeling as if they have a direct role until there are the kind of impacts where they have to respond, like the public is in trouble or government is in danger of being unable to operate. Outside of that, they're going to just be watching, say, your sector deal with this and, asking you for status reports. But as far as being actively involved, it's sort of like watching some company get attacked from a cyber standpoint and government saying, hey, it's not our business, but they're watching it with the rest of the public until it becomes their business. That could be too late. Is that making
okay?
Sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does. So, Persia, from your place in North Carolina, what other states are you targeting as special guests at this dinner party? Who do you really want to be there? Because based on what you want, which is most important to me, then I think Pat and I could offer some perspectives from the ESCC side of things about what we think we could learn as an industry from having those particular states. And then I might suggest another state or two just to test a few concepts that we're dealing with. And Pat,
I think that
chime in.
I want to answer those questions I want to get some discussion going on in terms of what it is that you guys need. What do you need? Now, that could be from a local level, state, regional, national level. I mean, what is the need of the private, of the public? What is it that you guys need from us when you're tackling a situation like this? Because I don't think we fully understand, or maybe we don't understand what we could be doing that we're not doing. I mean, that's a question I think needs to be answered. As far as the states that are involved, I mean, I tossed some states out on my napkin drawing. I said Florida, Georgia, South, and North, but I was just thinking in terms of like what we saw in terms of a threat from Dorian, for instance, and going up the coast. But that could have easily have been in the Gulf states. That could have easily been Alabama, Texas, Louisiana. Could have easily been those. So I don't want to lock that down so much because I wanted to leave that to you guys' input on what states that maybe you'd like to see involved in that, or what states that you feel like where things are weakest. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to pick which groups. You could go further north and go up the northern coast, northeast coast. It just depends on. I mean, I really want that discussion to kind of get brought out here.
This is Pat. Yeah, I think one thing to consider too, we have, I think Carla could probably talk to this better than I can, but there's a national level exercise next year that is FEMA's sponsoring that is cyber focused, and a lot of that activity is going to take place in May, from what I believe. And the two regions that I believe are playing heavily are Regions 1 and Regions 9. So there might be an opportunity to try to talk to some states who will be playing in the NLE and to get them involved. They may see this as an opportunity to sort of test some ideas, some messaging, et cetera, before they fully engage and play in the NLE.
Let me make a comment about that. Persia, one of the early things we talk about is we're working now with states that have private sector liaisons. And Laura, this goes back to kind of operationally. What's the long term? The long term is we want states to understand that they need a Persia. After this is all over, they've got to have a liaison that can go across these agencies on the right? And not Persia, you see where I'm going? I would almost like to start with the states that have a liaison to work with us here, because they don't know their election people. This will help them know them, right? So when the exercise is over, those connections are made, right? I'm just thinking operationally going forward.
Well, and so that goal dovetails beautifully with what our large multi-state utilities on the ESCC have told us is the very reason to get into a state coordination mindset and activity set, which is they want one person to call in the state.
Okay.
When the proverbial stuff hits the fan, if you're an 11-state utility and you think you have impacts in 7 of those states, you want to make 7 phone calls, not 7 times 8.
Okay.
So calling, you're going to call the governor. Probably the CEO is going to call the governor, but the field marshal for the utility wants to call one person.
And the state liaisons are usually connected to emergency management, usually. Sometimes the public information officer. That's another agency I left off. Persia, what are your thoughts about this long term? This is an important one. I think we ought to get out up front.
I guess my only question is, and I think that I know Carla is on here. If we had looked at the national level exercise, just to put this out there, I believe you said it was Region 1 and 10. Someone said 1 and 9. I guess my issue is this: the national level exercise. Keep in mind that is what it is. It's national level. So if we're going to stay operational, do we really, we know that operational typically that's at the state level. Every different state doing their own thing. They're doing their own transportation waiver, their own different laws, their own access and reentry. I mean, are we going a little bit, the 60,000-foot view, I don't know if it's going to keep us at an operational place where we can come out with solutions on the other end. I'm happy if someone please will comment. One of my FEMA cousins should maybe comment on it. What do you think?
Hey, Tom, Carla Gammon. So on
Carla?
the even year, hello?
Go ahead.
Tom, on the even years, there's 30,000 participants. So 2020 will be 30,000. So it may be like, I kind of joke, but the Soviet Union, where if you want to be nimble and get your objectives and be quick and fast, that they have several what they call warm-up events, because it's so many people kind of crawl, walk, run. So one course of action would be to, we could check in with their exercise team and see which one would be kind of a good fit, one of the warm-ups to it, because the national level one is almost, I would think it would just be too big, too scripted, too, it almost has to look pretty when you're all done. Whereas your team is so fast, it's like you're playing soccer and they're playing chess. And one other point is, in the exercise world, we've seen kind of the crawl, walk, run, where we do a small one, test it out, then another one, and then another one. And then sometimes we just do one to almost to fail faster. So you may, I'm not sure how you've done it in the past, but my recommendation is to stay away from the week of the national level exercise, because it's like a tank. But okay. I'd be happy to write a note, and I'll write a note to FEMA Exercises now and just ask them how best to integrate. Would you have maybe 50 or 100 players, or?
Yeah, I don't think we've given that too much thought yet.
Less about integrating. I think it was more about finding a target audience for this exercise that we're discussing this morning.
Yeah.
That there may be interest from the states who are playing in the NLE to use this as a sort of, like you said, warm-up. I'm not sure it would be something that would be aligned with the NLE, but again, if we were looking for states that wanted to engage in this.
So what if we could provide the states? Let me hear me out. We have six states on
the NLE has warm-ups built into it, where, like, I think, let's say January, February, and March, they do smaller warm-up exercises, and so there might be a potential for the All Hazards Consortium to participate in one of the warm-ups. Or you can be totally separate.
Okay. So we leverage the NLE. We just don't know what it is until we get close. However, what if we could confine this? Persia has a committee. There's 6 states: Florida, Virginia, D.C., Maryland, Pennsylvania, and probably if we could invite a couple others. Now, why do we have them? Because they all have private sector programs, right? And if we're going to have a long-term result from this, we have got to raise the value and visibility of those state liaisons. And in some states, they're gold. In other states, they're PIOs, and they're gold. In other states, they don't even listen to them. And I think long-term, what's the best impact? We could start, and that group meets every Tuesday at 2:30, right? I'm just looking to keep it small, work it until we burp the baby a couple times. I'm just comments.
I like that, because we have such a beautifully punishing scenario. I like the idea of keeping it small with a group of known states, and then even in your group of 6, keeping the impacted states to maybe just 2 of those, right? Maybe, so I'm seeing maybe a North Carolina, Virginia scenario, but you're going to do enough interesting stuff in it and test those private sector liaison structures enough to draw the other 4 states in. I like how the other 4 states offer political, geographic, mindset diversity. And then always, I have a let's get it done attitude, but if we have a scenario with just 2 states, then I only have to go ask a handful of utilities if they're cool with the ESCC engagement with this.
Okay. Persia, what do you think?
Well, I think we can maybe solve the problem just by looking at Dorian. I mean, we're rushing between Florida all the way up to Maryland for what, 8 days, trying to figure out what was going to happen. That involved a good bit of states, but when the final landfall happened, we can make that wherever we want it to be.
This is it's become a fairly crowded space in some ways. There's a lot of, everybody wants to run an EarthX and ESG and all these groups. Mm-hmm. So I think where we're going, whereas this is getting granular, because those are very broad. EarthX, it's self-paced, and it's not getting into these kind of details that we're talking about. I think that what Laura and Carla you're talking about is getting down to the details in one or two targeted areas and actually getting to the root of the challenges of responding in this environment, instead of just saying we're doing it's a black sky day and oh my gosh, everything's horrible. So that's a differentiator between what all those other folks are doing out there, and even to some extent NLE, where this could be really compelling to the targeted audiences, because it's different. And so I like where this is going, because I think making it different and being able to socialize why it's different than all those other types of things is going to be really, really important to getting people to attend.
So one other thing too, again, I'm just trying to leverage all the dots that we've connected. Those states get hit all the time. They're always dealing with something. I have letters from most of your members saying we're in the SISE that we got last January, Florida Power and Light, Dominion, we've got them. So this could be a bone to chew on, right? Which I think would be helpful, and I'll share that with you. So I think leveraging the liaisons that are already involved with each other. I mean, Maryland and Pennsylvania were going to send their liaisons down to support Persia and Beverly during the hurricanes that just passed through. They were trying to do that through EMAC. Certainly from a comms perspective, fuel, food, electric, supply chain, this is a massive gateway, Florida, the East Coast, I think. And I think knowing all those pieces, if we can agree on kind of the people that will be players, we could have hundreds of observers, right? But I don't want to overwhelm EEI. I don't want to overwhelm the states with a whole lot of stuff to do. But I think the big idea was, you can see on the right, we've got a number of state agencies that will have a role, and I may have left some off. They could potentially have a role, and that could change state by state.
Yeah, and that's another set of learnings that I want to take away, and that our utilities have asked the ESCC to start to get a fix on, is what is this diversity of structures across the states, and is there an ideal set of structures?
Right.
So that alone would be a fantastic report out from this exercise.
And that could be a product. Imagine having a playbook that would go state by state with the names, the roles, the people that would address that. That's a product we could actually produce from this.
And it's a product that I've shared with friends at DOE and in our utilities as well. The day the big one hits, and Pat and I are luckily in a control center in Joliet, or Dallas, we have our choice. That's actually information that my obsessive compulsive self, I want to know for every single state, who, what, where, when, how I contact them. I don't want to depend on anyone else outside of private sector to know that.
And you'll love this, because thanks to the partnership with DHS, the SISE will manage that list every month. So it's getting it once doesn't matter. 6 months later or an election later, they're all new, right? So we love it because we manage 10, 15,000 of these folks, okay? Yeah. And so I'm just looking at, after the exercise is over, now what do we do? And this is how we stay connected. Because Persia, knock on wood, will be at North Carolina forever. I doubt it. But when she leaves, we don't want to lose Persia, okay? And the SISE has her earmarked. Persia, I just want to let you know, we're going to track where, no, I'm kidding.
I would like this to be in a setting where, we're setting up a stage play here. I don't want friends in NARUC or other states to come and be in the stage play, but I want just a couple of orchestra row seats for people
Right.
who need to get these learnings
So
from utilities and from
right.
other states that we think have good structures, but we're investigating those right now and sort of testing them in different ways. But having just more clarity about who, what, where, when
Right.
is helping me. Although I do have a big question around the when, because I know I sort of casually said, when we're talking about our awesome exercise after it's over in May, and I think Persia may have jumped back there and said, whoa.
So,
So can we talk about when and what works best for Persia?
Okay, so just Persia and I spoke a little bit, and Persia, I want to chime in really quick on this. I would build up to a live event. I wouldn't start with a live face-to-face. I would do webinar 1. Oh my God, that was horrible. Okay, regroup, same people, 6 states, 2 utilities, EEI. Okay, webinar 2. Okay, that went better, right? See how we do it? By the 3rd time, you've got this really down. And Greg, I'd have you, DHS listening in like that. But we're behind the curtain for 3 or 4 maybe until we're ready to go live. We've burped the scenario, we've burped the questions, we get the process baked. Persia and I just going through the slides, we're like, oh my God, I forgot all about it. You know what I mean? So we're kind of doing dry runs, right? And then if we wanted to do a live one, okay, I think having it in North Carolina with Persia would be fantastic. She's got a strong following. Anyway, Persia, that's my thinking, is do virtuals with a small group to build it up till it's ready, then we can come out. Because we don't want to hit the ground with problems. I know. And the other thing too, from the SISE perspective, Ken, I think from the SISE perspective is we want to take on the control of the invite list for the players, not you all, because they're going to hammer you. They're going to hammer the stage. Why wasn't I invited? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, you got to call Tom. Okay, have him call me. Okay, we can easily handle that because you're going to have a lot of requests. I told you, we already had emails. You mentioned cyber and everybody wants in. And we're not trying to get big. We're trying to get a product or a set of products stay small. Any comments or thoughts, Persia, from your perspective?
Yeah,
Well, Tom,
let me
hey,
just
Tom.
jump in. Tom, let me jump in real quick. I've got to step out of here for a minute. I think you're absolutely right in that, the big exercise should really be the capstone with a series of workshops and smaller exercises leading up to it. This is kind of cutting edge work we're talking about, and if we try to go straight to capstone on version 1, we're going to have, I think, too many lessons learned coming out of that. Better to do some of that work up front and then continue to grow and capture learnings as we go.
Okay, Persia?
Tom, we're going to do the crawl, walk, run, which thank you for that. I think it's great. Then if we can, just to kind of a side note, we'd be looking at really clarifying what our objectives on each phase are going to be. If we're doing kind of a stepping stone, we need to look at what we're building up to. If we're going to build up to that, gentleman just said, a capstone exercise, and at the same time keeping it different, which is if that's going to separate us from the group of exercises out there and keep this one more and keep folks more engaged.
Okay. And there's another piece of being virtual. I could do 3 states a week. If we had funding and staff, we could do 3 states a week and be done with half the country in a month. Virtuals get to the people very fast. If you give them lead time, you can't get in 3 days, but you got to get out in front. And it will allow us to work, Persia, with our private sector liaisons. Hey, we need these 6 people invited to this webinar, and they're going to speak on the webinar, which means they show up. I don't want them listening in. I want the election person for Maryland on the call, and we're going to ask them these 3 questions. So when you invite folks to speak, they usually show up 99%, and now we have their contact information. See what I'm doing? So if we take a dual approach, live, optics, I think that's really important. But behind the curtain, Chris McIntosh knows this. We could go state by state right down the East Coast via webinar and get a lot of this done. As far as building the contact directory, and it take a lot more work, but
would the webinars be
a virtual tabletop?
I've just never participated in anything
It's
like
fantastic.
that, so it's hard for me to visualize.
Yeah. It's just like we have now. There'll be screens, there'll be scenario. It'll follow the TTX outline we all are creating, but it will be virtual. But
how long would you keep people on the phone or the platform? Like
a long one is 90 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good.
Because you can script it that way. Now, and Persia, I don't want to speak for the states, but if our goal is to build a directory and find these people, then we now know who to invite to the live regional one. Or you with me? So I'm really big on small and fast and quick. Then you can build to that. Persia, I'd like to get your perspective and anyone else's perspective on that as well.
I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that, Tom. If we're gonna, we stay results oriented. We're looking for answers. If we're not, if we're not building on theory or trying to get to the next theory, I'm excited about it. If it's going to be solutions oriented.
And Laura, the other piece is if we do that small approach like that, we can better control the rumor mill of what it is, and why wasn't I invited, blah, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we can provide cover for all the federal folks that were involved in the plan. And they can say, hey, look, it's not our tabletop that's being run by the SISE work group. Okay? I'm telling you, that is we can remove the liability. Hey, we can do all of that stuff very quickly. And it just helps it get it done, faster. Okay. Any other comments from the folks on the call? Carla? Any comments?
No, Tom, you have a great idea. We have a thing called Exercise in a Box. It's kind of a template that you just fill in your disaster and this and that. They use it for when governors change out or senators or different politicians come and go very quickly. So I don't know if you've heard of this, but it makes for a nice template if you want a small exercise.
Okay, hang on a minute. Hang on one second here. Let me go down the list here. Thanks, Carla. Dave Vanderbloemen, comments?
No, I think you're honing in on it, Tom. I think the next session on the agenda we'll get to the meat of it.
Okay, Doug Baker, comments?
Tom, this is great, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know that we've ever really thought that big picture or that big of an issue in this industry yet. We're still trying to figure out how to keep people from stealing credit card information. So I think it's valuable and something we should absolutely be including across our CIO council as well as our asset protection council. So I applaud it.
Okay, and Doug, I think we can shape. The cascading impacts portion of this,
sure,
specifically for a sector, right? If we get the front end down, then we can, when we get to cascading impacts, that's when we can customize it to fuel or food. And we can add Persia, what do you call them? A pinch? Is that what you call them?
Yeah, I call that a pinch, where we can, all this tension is happening and you get pinched, You're running from the zombies and you get ketchup in your shoe. That's a pinch.
That's great.
Okay, perfect.
Or an injection.
Right. Okay, very good. Gene Shear? I'm sorry, Chad, do you have a comment? Okay, Gene Shear, comments?
Yeah, we're here to support Tom. We'll participate as needed, and sounds like a good scenario.
I think it's safe to say everybody on this call is going to at least be an observer, right? Be part of it. I think it's important everybody starts, finishes. Karen Moe, any thoughts or perspective?
No, this is the first time I've seen this kind of setup. This is very interesting.
Okay.
No other. Thanks.
All right. Well, we're gonna. I think this will evolve over time, and I'm really excited. I think getting data reliably and getting it labeled with the ORL is going to be really important. Mike Benetti, any comments or input from your perspective?
No, I think this is great. It's very interesting, and it's good to see how the process moves forward.
Okay.
Do we have a dream set of first three states? And a point in time where you'd like to do the first webinar. I have a selfish request that it not be before January 28th, 2020, because we have the ESBC big Poobah CEO meeting that day. But I would love to be able, during that big Poobah meeting, to say, this is what we are doing. You wanted us to get down in the mud with the states and figure this stuff out. We are on it, and this is how.
Okay, easy to do. Yes. Yeah. Persia, any thoughts about Laura's comments? Yeah.
I'm okay with not going before. Laura would say just January 20. I'm okay with not going before that. Maybe we can sketch out some potential dates based on the phases, the build up to the capstone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I just I want to be cognizant of things that I know I don't know, which are internal drivers in North Carolina state government, drivers for the SISE and your different work projects. Pat has got at his fingertips here the NLE exercise build-up cycle, which appears to start in probably starting now, but the more outward-facing, public-facing parts of that are March, April, and May.
Yeah, so the NLE really, there are a lot of Intel-related run-up exercises in February through May, which are government only, and then we will likely be playing heavily in the exercise sometime the week of May 11th. So we are working on that now.
Okay. He said May 11th?
Yeah, most of the major sort of component exercises for NLE, at least for our purposes, for the energy sector, are from May 11th through 15th.
Check. Well, I want to include, can we include those other states that we mentioned, or if we put this out to a bunch of the states to get a handle on who wants to be involved?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that understanding some of their challenges, it'd be nice to pull those in now. If I had to go so far as to say that each of you guys on here in the room and on the call, non-government, there are states that you would love to have that point of contact or go deeper, and some of those states don't have private sector liaison, or you're not even sure who the operations people are if they're activated. And so tackling as many problems as we can along the way, I think is good. And I think we can do that.
Okay. All right, so let me just go over our agreement so far. We're at initial agreement on the scenario. Is that fair enough? Okay. Our approach, we create the template, which is going to take some time, right? The template will include the goals and objectives, the people, the process, all that stuff. I'm just looking at kind of a playbook, okay? We agree on the initial products. That's the North Star. Whatever products we want to come out of it, whether it's optics, tangible, handheld, whatever. And then we do several virtual dry runs with our test group, okay? We set dates for the live TTX and start planning ahead, right? This group is fast, okay? And they'll go to market with something half done, and we'll get it done. And then it'll be 80% done, and before you know it, it's 90, and it's never going to be better than 90 because you're always going to have new cooks in the kitchen, right? But Persia, I'm just thinking, we have Laura on one of our Tuesday calls. We run through what we've covered, and I'll bet you all of those liaisons will say, I'd like to support this because I don't know who all those people are in my state, and this would give me the ability to reach out and invite them. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Session 1. We've kind of touched on session 2, and we might end early today. We did a review and discussion. The other piece to this, Persia, would be injects, right? Maybe we can talk about some of the injects and then materials. So why don't we start with the inject discussion? I'll pull up the map, Persia, if you want to kind of give us the backdrop of how you see overall how you see injects working here.
Well, we had hoped, guys, and there's a couple different things. There are discussion questions, as you all know, with TTXs, and then we've got injects, which inject is really supposed to, create the pinch I was talking about. So let's talk about the questions first. If we wanted to come up with a good solid set of questions, not a gazillion, but maybe 4, where we could talk about those and really hammer those at each phase of the exercise. So questions like, what is your primary, what's your priority right now in this phase, or what is your biggest problem, your biggest worry, or your biggest concern, or what's your first action, or what's your biggest weakness? I mean, I don't know, whatever those questions could be, but I wanted them to be, I had hoped that they could be the same 4 or 5 going across the phases. And the inject's a little different thing. Those may be where we, and those would create the pinch. That's where we ramp up the social media panic or ramp up the zombie attack, if you would. Those are going to increase the pressure on the scenario.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm asking is those good questions. Yeah, we need to kind of hammer out what those questions are going to be that will give us the widest discussion. Laura?
When we have the understanding that we're going to have our basic scenario and our basic desired injects, because we know as puppet masters what we want to test in the states and between sectors. On the webinars with the small focus groups, really, are those folks allowed to suggest injects that they would like to see to test their structures?
I think one. Okay. Yeah, Persia, go ahead. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're flexible, absolutely. I mean, and that's the whole point of this, because things are going to occur to us in the process. And so I would say, we need to stay as flexible as we can be, because things are going to occur to people that didn't before. And this is a fast-moving, scenario, relatively quick.
Yeah. Laura, I was going to say, one, I think it's respectful. I love the idea, number one. And that's what gets their brush on the canvas. Now they're committed. Now they're, wow, this is part mine. And that's what we want. When it's all over, we want these liaisons and their directors to say, wow, that was amazing. We've never seen a scenario like that. We've never engaged private sector like that. And we learned, I'll guarantee you, we will teach the emergency management folks and build connections to their own state agencies they don't necessarily have all day to develop, right? The other piece I think would be interesting to look at is as we get into food and fuel and these other sectors, what pinch could we put in there that would draw them in to help shape that, right? Because in the SISE right now, in the room, we have electric, we have food, on the phone fuel, and telecom represented here. And I think I might have missed one. Transportation we had yesterday, okay? So we've got tentacles to those through the SISE, and I think having Greg and the Nick involved, whatever we need critical infrastructure-wise, they can help us get. So I love the idea, Laura. I think that's great because this will never be done. The framework will be done, but the injects can be tweaked per state. And that would help the states, and that would go right into the playbook. But if we have the base template...
Anytime, I want to remind you, I agree. I think Laura's suggestion, awesome, because it's going to grow legs. And as a reminder, we had thought about adding in points in this exercise where we would pause and discuss, just so that we could capture all the ideas coming out of, as we're moving along, rather than waiting to the end. I mean, it's just something that I thought we might want to consider because there's so many moving pieces.
Yeah. Okay. All agreed? Anybody on the bridge? Anybody disagree? Does that sound all right? Okay. Silence is golden. Okay. Why don't we take phase 1 question and phase 1 injects and just work it right now while we're together, okay? So I have on the screen here, you guys can see it, I'll zoom in real quick. Is this tool helping? Okay, I take that as a yes. I'm just kind of getting my navigation skills here. All right, so phase 1, the inject will be, we don't have to write it right now, but the inject will be a hurricane in the southeast, ice storm in the Northeast, whatever is relevant to that. What's the inject for the election hack?
That's going to be multiple reports across how many precincts and growing as to machines that don't work or ballots not being counted or not being reported back to the election headquarters. This will kind of grow. Okay. At first, it'll look like a few machines are kind of glitchy, but then it becomes clear that entire precincts aren't able to vote or not able to count ballots or whichever. Until it becomes half the state, 2 states, 3.
Add anything from? Yeah. This is where I need help from the state election supervisors. Okay.
Now, and
anything jump off the plate for you, Pat?
Just to add a little complication to the election. I mean, long lines. I mean, if this were looking at a national election.
Oh, good point.
So that would add
long lines.
That would add in some law enforcement needs, etc.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. So let's drop down to the questions. Persia, I think you said a couple of them. During phase 1 natural disaster, let's talk about some of the questions from your perspective, and then Pat, I'd like to hear from you and the rest.
Oh, I said, what are your priorities? I'm talking about operational priorities.
Okay. Any others? A storm's coming. What are your operational priorities?
Tom, I love the who do you call question.
Okay. So who's your POC at your state?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to feed the product right there.
What is your messaging? The current messaging regarding the storm, evacuation orders, etc.
Great point.
What you're telling the public.
What is your messaging?
Public messaging. Yeah.
Public messaging. Thank you. Okay. And this will build. It'll actually get too big over time. That's a good start. And how about questions on the election hack? Persia, I'll let you chime in first here. Report on machines not working, precincts reporting operational issues, long lines. Let's start with that.
The key to me here is that folks are not really understanding what's happening initially. That it just looks like a mechanical breakdown. So the panic that happens when it's pretty clear that this isn't just an ordinary mechanical breakdown because it's spreading precinct by precinct and then half the counties and then multiple states. So
okay.
I think the question becomes here is that, where do you get your information? Because everyone's going to be looking around going, who has the real answer of what's happening? So, and maybe where do you get your information is who's your POC. I mean, I'm not sure if that's different for anybody. Or if you go to like a dashboard for information, but your point of contact is somebody else, it's just a good clarification question, I think, here. And at what point do you start, at what point do you start looking for information? So there's a couple mixed questions there.
Okay.
Again, public messaging, I think that's going to be a perennial.
Okay.
I think what's your public messaging related to that?
Perfect. Or if you do anything, right?
Well, public messaging and then communication with the candidates. I don't know. I don't think we have to get into detail here. I think that's
okay.
We pull out of the discussion.
No, but you're bringing up a good point. There's probably a million questions depending on who's asking, right? I never thought about that. You got political, you got operational, you got executive.
I think a lot, like in terms of like the messaging for natural disaster, that's all, that is always aligned, at least at the federal level, with industry and government through DOE, through FEMA, et cetera. That messaging for the election hack would have to be, I suspect, coordinated with the candidates and the political parties within the state. You want to make sure that you're all speaking with one voice about what the heck's going on and how you're addressing it.
Okay, good. All right. Anyone else?
One thing to point out, I know that there's a whole group at DHS that's dealing with this. It would be good to get their insights in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with a lot of the whole election process other than being a customer to it. But you may want to bring in some of those subject matter experts as you kind of develop some of those internal scenarios specific to elections, because there's a process. Some of them are automated, some of them are manual, and then, you know, how do they tally those votes and things of that nature. So it might be worth it rather than trying to fight some scenario, or maybe I can reach out to those folks and get kind of a scenario related to that.
Okay, very good.
Or they may see this as an opportunity to test some of the things that they are preparing for the general election coming up today or yesterday?
Today. Yeah.
But this is where that misinformation will come into play. I mean, there will be an effort to say, no, everything's fine, or misdirecting people about what is actually going on with the election.
And social media would be a good element to that, too.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we just went through injects. I mean, that's how we do it, and we do it over and over and over again. This is how it works. But I wanted to at least give you an idea of how we can build the playbook as we go forward. Let's talk for a minute about TTX materials. And what I mean by that, digital, printed, right? I mean, unlimited resource budget, like what do we want to have for this? Persia, thoughts from your perspective, having conducted, you know.
We do the we're going to do the smaller crawl, walk, run, you know, in phases. Then the initial one is easy, I think, to do with all electronic materials. I mean, we can go back and forth about whether or not we're going to need read ahead or how far into read ahead scenario information. You know, we can do it in slide presentation form. There's a lot of different ways. But we can do that totally electronically, I think.
Okay. So I think first up would be a website, read ahead videos, docs, documents, whatever, slide deck to kind of explain the process. Are there any other, Greg, any other things you can think is how do we, this, I think it's important to get ahead on the resource board because this is where we can set expectations early, which reduces a lot of confusion.
I mean, things like, you know, are we going to set up like a formal control cell, simulation cell, and, you know, method of how we, you know, deliver the injects, those types of things are always kind of, you know, things to think of beforehand, how we're actually going to do that.
Okay.
Well, since it's a TTX, though, are you thinking, you're thinking of a sim cell, but we're talking about a TTX?
I just don't know how much of this TTX is virtual versus, you know, we're all sitting around an actual table.
Yeah, I think this is kind of, we did virtual exercises that had a combination of people in a room and on the bridge. And under the NIP, we designed a virtual exercise that was designed to onboard people into the SISE. One scenario, 4 injects, but each inject led them to a process to log in. So it was training them at the same time exposing them to coordination, you know, public and private. Maybe we could design or take advantage of that somehow where we could do that where through the screen share, we provide the inject and let them take whatever action or discussion they need. Chris, thoughts?
Well, I think that any exercise, full scale, small scale, TTX, whatever, is made much more effective if you can introduce some of the tools that can be used for decision making. So using SISE type decision products and providing injects through that designed to spur the TTX conversation, I think adds value to the effectiveness of the exercise beyond the exercise. So they've been socialized to some of the things that they would see through some of the sit reps that go out and those kind of things. So I always err on the side of trying to include those, even if it's just for the purpose of driving discussion.
Okay. All right. So live TTX will probably have different material than a virtual. Okay. We don't have to know what those are. I just want to throw them on the board to make sure we had them. We had them at least identified. Persia, any other pieces you've used to help with your exercises down in North Carolina?
No, we've done some videos. I don't know if we want to go that far, but we've done some actual videos.
And what do you use for the videos? You use for scenario or use training or both?
It's for scenario and for training. We've done both, but the scenario is probably the one that we've used the most recently.
Okay. There's a great use of videos for scenarios, and then post-exercise, have a series of them as a follow-up, right? I'll call it training. Because there's humans involved, and they forget. Okay. Good.
And Tom, the other thing would be to, when we go to the actual capstone physical in-person exercise, we'd be rolling up the outcomes of all of these.
I'm not following you, sorry.
Yeah, we'd roll up the outcomes of all of these, and it would become sort of like the stepping stones at the capstone.
Oh, I'm losing you on roll-up. I don't follow what you're saying. Like.
So all of the information and answers and solutions that we came to in the steps leading up to the small exercises, leading up to the big one, they all kind of move towards the bigger solutions in the larger exercise. Sometimes that means expanding the scenario. Sometimes it means solutions that are being brought forward to the scenario in the capstone.
Okay, got it.
You know what I mean? It's sort of it's a complete roll up. So that may mean more videos at the end.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll shape this as we go forward. I think it's important to know that for every person we engage in this, there's probably 10 to 20 that we won't, and we need to build this for the casual observer. It just kind of comes, and we got to bring them up to speed from scratch. Why this is important. Greg, you had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, just also, are we reaching out to VIPs? What level? You mentioned directors or things. Maybe there's just part of that exercise. We pull them in, as in the after actions or post after actions. I don't know.
Okay. I mentioned surveys, right? There may be a great opportunity to gather input from folks, names, rank, serial number, reaction, scenario enhancements, or whatever. I think we got that pretty well started. So we're good on those three. Let me go to, and I'll transition all this into the mind map. So we got about an hour left. Let's go to the participants' engagement and desired outcomes and products. So Persia, you and I started a discussion here, and I'll pull up my okay. So if you look on the left side, we've got all the potential, well, maybe not all of them, but we have the potential players here from industry, states, feds, trades, ISACs, other. And again, limited number of players, but we can have a broad audience. Right? If we do virtuals and it goes well after we have it, we could actually share that via video so people can watch it happen if they want to. So any discussions, Pat, I'll just make sure, do we miss anyone? And again, I'm just throwing everybody on here, player and observer. I've got people that at least we started with. Any thoughts from your perspective? Do we miss anybody?
Not on the industry side.
Okay.
I mean, we would want to bring in the other segments of our sector, obviously the munis and the co-ops. We can do that through the SEC.
Yeah, and I kind of put the trades there to cover them all, down at the bottom. to trades, ISACs, other. And when I say ISACs, I'm thinking election ISAC, you know, SLTT, you know, that ilk. Persia, any other piece on the state people that we've missed? Persia, you still there?
Yeah, Tom, I'm sorry. I had to step into the hall for a minute. Yeah.
Okay. On the state people to be engaged, emergency management, elections, executive, police, National Guard. One I left off is the PIO, Public Information Office, and IT.
Right.
Any others?
No, I think you hit them all. You said local law enforcement. You had or either state highway patrol. You had that.
Yeah, I just have them under police. Yeah, that's a broad category. Okay.
What about regulatory agents? I mean, do we have?
You know what? I didn't have any regulars. That's a very good point. I didn't have regs on there. Let me do that.
So it's that in the state energy offices, et cetera. I mean.
The state. He's that. Exactly. Left those out. Diener, Department of Energy. Because that'll include fuel.
Yeah. And this was a quick drawing, so as we come up with stuff, we can add it to this. What I'm trying to do is have a snapshot of the thing so we can give it to all of you to have as a, you know, snapshot of where we're going.
Tom, I'm sorry, I had to step out. Is the cyber aspect going to stay within state systems, or is it going to expand out to public sector systems as well?
When you say public sector, I think government. Are you saying?
Excuse me, private.
Private sector.
Yeah.
This is where, when we get into the cascading impacts, Kent, we could do anything we want there.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is, you know, I think we have to decide how much is the exercise going to be a technical cyber exercise versus a focus on cascading impacts and collaboration between the federal, state, government, and private sector. It's a very different set of players, at least from my perspective, when you start talking about the technical identification, isolation, mitigation, and removal of a cyber attack versus teams that are focused on restoration of those cascading impacts. So we'll just have to.
Persia, could you hear Kent's question?
Yeah, I lost the last part of it, but I think I heard him talking about whether or not this is we were going to lean towards the technical aspects of a cyber attack, or simply the physical and cascading effects. That was the question, right, Ken?
Correct. That's something we have to. Go ahead.
We got to decide. Yeah.
So
how far do you want to go?
Yeah.
Well, what are you thinking?
I agree, Ken. I think initially it's connecting the people and coordinating response.
I would agree, because it's a different set of people when you're talking about technical system response versus.
Yeah. But I love where you're going there, because if we can engage the technical side of the private sector, it's a different group of people. Disaster managers are not the IT technical cyber people typically. And maybe we do that, Persia, through a pinch or other injects in the cascading impacts, right? And Kent, that is a great question. That's how this can get bigger very quickly, right? And we want it to. Maybe we create a second version of it that does that.
And I think that goes into your longer term strategy and planning. So, I mean, even on the SISE side, I could talk to a lot. We have our own exercise cyber teams. You know, we have our own U.S. CERT teams, HERT teams. You know, every kind of team you can think of on the cyber that addresses those types of issues and challenges that we're up against, and how they respond on the federal end. And there are some regulatory things, but I don't want to kind of get into that because I don't want to take away from what we're trying to do for the exercise. Yeah.
I think that's a great point because, I mean, if all these things are going on, I mean, I've got some questions about, you know, that information just coming out and information to the public. I mean, I'm sure not. I mean, surely not, right? I mean, how is this information being exchanged if it is at all?
I do think you could use this exercise as an opportunity to what Greg just pointed out, to let the state folks know exactly what resources will be coming into the state from the federal government. We may not actually, you know, get into the technical aspects of exactly what they're doing, but just aware that those resources are there and will be probably coming in to assist.
Yeah, and that I agree there, and that maybe that's just an educational part of the exercise. So takeaway.
Okay. And you know, when we're talking about this, Kent, I just was drawing some notes here. The TTX certainly will have a people operational impact. You brought up the technical. I'll guarantee there'll be policy questions that come up as well. It's just when you have people talking about this stuff, and, you know, we don't really know how to do that. We don't have anything. So I think it's going to be all three. But like I said, we get the template right. I think the cascading impacts is where we can dovetail into the next side of this, right? Because I think that is really as important, because I would estimate that technical systems people at state and industry don't get together often, right? I may be wrong. Okay. All right, good. All right. So I think we've talked about the desired outcomes and products, but I wanted to make sure that this is our North Star. So are we in agreement? We want a state POC directory is one. I forgot, Pat, Laura had one that she was, what was it? What was it that Laura mentioned, one of the outcomes? I'll check my notes. Okay. Any other products that we want to,
I think you mentioned a playbook, or is that for the exercise or to develop one afterwards?
When I say template, yeah, I mean a playbook, yeah. It's going to outline the who, what, how, when, where, why, you know, okay. I'll go back to my map here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to get you off to add another outcome, so.
TTX template, state agency POC directories, tools and training, playbooks, policy, partnerships, good one, cross-sector analytics. This would be an interesting one as we start building this data, right? When we get into cascading impacts, Greg, how that might, you know, bring in food, fuel, and the supply chain. That's a great opportunity to capture that information. Well, how would that actually impact you if this went offline? And then events workshop. There may be other ones. There could be research that comes out of this. There could be other things. Okay. Question? Can't hear you, sorry.
Are all your injects, master scenario, events list, all those exercise terms, is that part of the playbook?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll make a note here. Okay. Good.
What about some refined messaging templates? I mean,
oh, great point.
I would suspect / hope that we would go into this with each of the participants already having some of their messaging templates compiled, but we may learn something from the conversation. They will want to revise their templates.
Okay. You know, and maybe you brought up another point early, Pat. I think it'd be good is if we could, maybe one of our products is we can take part of this and bring it into some of the larger exercises, right? I don't know what I would call that, but I think it's having it modular enough where we can connect to some of the GridX or connect to something in.
Yeah, I mean, like the messaging templates, those are, you know, obviously living documents, and what we learn from one exercise or one event, we would carry into the next exercise. exercise or next event. So I think it will just naturally occur
Okay.
with the players if they are participating in the NLE or any other exercises this summer or next summer.
Okay. Yeah, this is a great point, because if we can develop products that we can feed into public or private large-scale exercises, that helps coordinate down the road. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
One more thing, maybe it's over-explaining something, but when we updated the ESCC playbook this year, we added some additional templates that were protocol documents, where basically, okay, this happens, this is the sort of a listing of how we would, something happens, this is how we would engage with DOE, how we would engage with DHS, who is responsible for what steps. That might be something to have come out of the exercise or something, or maybe have it drafted ahead of time and it could be refined, but just basically the tick-tock of something happens, how do we begin that coordination, and who are the people we talk to at what times, etc.
You mean like a checklist?
Almost, yeah. But
okay. Checklist. People love checklists. It's a great product. Thank you. Persia, anything on your end?
No, I'm just liking
Good.
it.
Okay. All right. I think we're coming up on the end here. The only thing we didn't cover was engagement, right? Like, let's talk about what we mean by that, right? We were looking at participants, engagement, and desired outcomes. So I guess we're talking about player and observer engagement, right? Can you give us some initial thoughts about what you mean there, or what you see?
Yeah, Tom. What I was saying here is the observers. I was getting into, and I think you mentioned it here. I was getting into, we have participants and players and observers, but we have people that are learning and people just want to watch. But then there was the question of whether or not we wanted evaluators there. Remember when I mentioned that? Whether we want some level of evaluation. Maybe this could be part of what we do when, if we choose to stop every, at whatever steps throughout the exercise and capture what's going on, or AAR items on the fly. Maybe that's the time when that so-called evaluator, maybe they're more of a leader, kind of grabs that. I don't know that it's necessary. If it makes sense for us to evaluate at this point, I'd like to see what people think. Are we just doing information gathering, or are we actually kind of leaning into the functional exercise part of it and trying to evaluate ourselves?
It would be nice to get an evaluation of, we had 5 goals. How did we come? How did we come about it? Did our approach work? Did those goals get accomplished? I don't think it can ever hurt to have somebody give you candid feedback. That webinar you couldn't hear. There's no audio. Well, I would kind of like to know that, right? Or in a live session, Tom talked too much, whatever. Okay. Well, we can work on this one. I just want to make sure we peeled the onion. Pat, any thoughts about engagement? I guess we're talking about people engagement here, so we know what we're talking about. Okay. Any thoughts?
Well, it was already brought up earlier, but what level of player are we looking at? We're looking at director level, VP level. What's the, yeah, I mean, and well, it's the operational and communications. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times you do these exercises, we really focus on the operational folks, right?
Yeah.
But it would be good to include the public affairs, communications.
That is a great suggestion.
Especially if we're talking about messaging, so.
Yes. Persia, did you catch all that?
I caught part of it.
Pat, you have such a soft, humble voice, Pat. It's hard. Unlike yours, true.
A couple of questions. One is the level of player. Whether do we want, the director level, VP, and then also a question about not just operations folks, but trying to incorporate folks who do the messaging, the public affairs folks, communications folks, etc. I can tell those folks are always incredibly busy, and it's a challenge getting them involved, and I can completely understand why.
Yeah.
But at least some representatives from those teams. Yeah.
So if I'm going to engage, Chris McIntosh, I'm going to ask you for input here. If I'm going to engage, let's start top down, right? If I'm going to engage a decision maker, right, from my experience, they're going to want to see. They're going to want to see something in the end, okay? The operational folks are going to want to see and know what I need to do now, right? This is a really great question because we can engage them visually with different things, whether we're live TTX or online. Comments or thoughts about that? Because I know you've done a lot of these in the past.
Yeah, I think I go back to my original comment earlier. What's the difference in the way that a state director, for example, leadership, reacts and responds to this type of a scenario versus, hate to use the word, a generic outage, and deliver at the end of this exercise cycle a report, a playbook, a pick your adjective that describes the uniqueness of the response to this scenario so that they can then start to build new standard operating procedures for a cyber-derived scenario versus a natural incident-derived outage. I think that's what's missing is there's been a lot of talk about over the last decade about solar weather, cyber, all these different ways that essentially knock the power out. But there has not been a great conversation about how does that modify the way you respond. And I think that if we can start delivering and show them we're going to deliver the results of these TTX and these discussions, we'll start to hone in on the difference at the state EOC and the local EOC between these scenarios and how you brief and how you respond and who you talk to, and start building a playbook. I think that there's immense value in that. And to your point, if you're a director, now I'm getting something out of this that's tangible that I can then use to plan going forward.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that thank God we have never had to deal with a major cyber incident here in the United States.
Yeah.
Based on the conversations and the plan that we have done, I think there'd be two major differences. I think, Chris, you mentioned earlier, it really is about consequence management, right? So that's what a lot of the state folks are going to be focused on. But related to that, there are two separate things that makes a cyber incident, I believe, different. One is that you don't know when it's going to be over. You know when the hurricane has come through. You know when the impacts have ended. You don't know when those impacts are going to end. So that brings up an issue of having that engagement with the federal government. They may have the intel to tell you when the impacts are going to be over. They may tell you, well, actually, it's going to be, we think based on their intel, it's going to be shifting to this other sector, or it could be focused somewhere else. So one thing, and we're going to be talking about this in GridX, getting some one-day read-ins and understanding where you have to go to get those briefings, who has clearances. So there's that aspect to it that I'm not sure a lot of the folks who do consequence management would think about, okay, how do we get that information and apply it to what we do in our regular sort of battle rhythm of operations. So that's one big thing, and I'm just sort of quickly going out.
Great point.
The second is messaging. There's a whole other set of messaging points that you will have to raise within a cyber incident than you will be for a physical incident or like a hurricane or something like that. And the biggest problem is you don't really have much to tell because you don't know really what the impacts are. I mean, you know what some of the impacts are, you don't know when they're end. So you're really going to be focusing on the process and talking about how you're coordinating with federal government across the industry, et cetera. So I think if you want, we can maybe try to focus on those two areas that I think are probably the most helpful for those folks to kind of start getting their heads around when they have a cyber incident.
You know, you just nailed something that, and I'd like to ask Dave Vanderbloemen, who's on the phone, to chime in here. So what does the state want to know from the utility? ETR. That's what we're beating them up for. ETR. But in this scenario, they may not be able to give you an ETR. You're absolutely right.
Well, we may be able to get, Dave can answer this, but you can probably give them an ETR, but that ETR may be OBE by the time you get it to them because there may be another attack going on in another part of Dominion.
Or you don't even know how bad is bad yet, because there's different things happening in the SCADAs.
And that's why that
stuff.
relationship with the federal counterparts who have that intel is so important, and how you would integrate that into your operations that you would normally have going on for a hurricane response or something like
This
that.
right here, and Dave, please jump in, could be a module by itself, because that's all that, I mean, the state wants to know, when are the lights coming back on, where?
Right.
So that way I know, do I need to get generators to this hospital, or do I need to get gas because they only have 12 hours of gas, and you're telling me the ETR for their generator and their ETR is 48 hours? I mean, that stuff is what the consequence management is all about. When the ETR is sliding, it screws all that up.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm with
yeah,
you.
I'll put a little bit of caveat to that. Before you can even give the ETR, you have to tell them what's impacted, right? I mean, it doesn't do you any good to say we're going to have this restored if you haven't given them confidence that you know that they're even out yet. So that what goes back to my original comments was the number one, and that's why I think in this exercise we have the ability to scope this and say, here's what, and you can this exercise, this time we're going to do this, the next time we'll change the scenario and do that. But what is it that you want to be impacted? Because there's operating systems that actually that manage the grid. There's communication systems for the customers to get in. Can they see that their lights are out? Can they access your account? What is it that you want to be impacted? How are you going to communicate that to the state, to the federal, to the local level, and make sure that everyone's talking to, because we have the same constituents. We're all talking to the same people out in the field. Do you know that I've been impacted? How did it get impacted? And when are my lights coming back on? Or when is the impact going to end? Those are the three things in a EOC that we're looking at: is what just happened, when do we think you're going to get it back on, and how do we communicate to them that have confidence that we're going to do it? And if we miss that ETR, we're done. So you got to be careful about saying what that ETR is until you are confident that you know what the problem is.
Yeah. Let me ask some more other sectors here while we're talking about this. Kent, from comms, feedback on this topic from the comms perspective is prediction, right? How do you know? How do you tell customers? I don't know if there's an answer for that. I just want to give you an opportunity.
You know, it's a very interesting point about customer communication. We are looking for ways to be more transparent and more, be more of a push instead of a pull for communications to our customers, but it's an evolving body of work. The discussion around ETR does get to be very interesting because, as soon as you talk about cyber and if there's direct impact to the power grid, my immediate assumption is I got to start planning for long-term sustainment of the network without commercial power, or at least in some areas. And then it gets into the same discussions that we always end up having, access to fuel and, things like that. And that, I think, is going to get real dicey if it's a long-term event. So it's another one of those long-term cascading impacts. It's kind of interesting because we were talking about it, and I think there's some alignment that a lot of times, the cyber professionals are going to be off doing the systems work, and we're going to have to make sure that there's also, both internally within our business and then across industry and government, that there's that good flow of information from the cyber professionals to the overall emergency management processes that are in place and going on.
Okay, very good. Chad, how about from food perspective? I'm just looking at initial cascading thoughts here. Cash registers down, power out. I don't know if you guys have talked cyber yet with your members on this.
So I don't know if Doug's still online. Defer to him as far as the conversation that if we've had that with the CIO council. But just from my perspective, as Chris said, it's one of those things where cyber, there is no clear ending for it. As we prepare for other natural disasters or even with fires, right? At least with the fires going on in California, we can know, we can see the progress of how it's going to at least get worse or get better. But with cyber, is that level of uncertainty that would definitely cause some worries. And I know with us, if that were to take place, the biggest thing for us would just be communication with the states and federal governments. It's with Kent and figuring out kind of status reports. It's kind of a cascading effect. If they're on top of it, eventually it'll trickle down to our members and it'll clear some headaches up. But is Doug still on the line?
No.
Okay.
Doug, are you still on? Doug Baker? I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where, and I could check with him, but I know, as he said earlier, where the kind of industry is so kind of not far down the line, but worrying about credit fraud and coupon stacking that this needs to, and it is. I know with Doug on the helmet, is something that is on their radar. So we're just we're really glad to just be in the room and kind of hear what's going on, because it's a lot of stuff that is happening with and especially with the electronic side, we kind of take from and we kind of model after. So I think it's one of the things where we just have to sit back and see how other industries are taking it, just take notes and then pull from what we can. But it is something that does need to be on our radar, and is on our radar.
I think this will be the beauty, Chad, of as we get into the future calls, as this starts to take shape, just having folks on the phone and talking about these cascading impacts. I mean, that's a whole other set.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
As I think Carl was saying yesterday from FEMA, it's for us. It's if that were to take place, it makes it so much easier for our members and even for us at FMI just to know, all right, who do we reach out? Who's the person for this? So I know Doug's been hard into cyber and security, so it's something that's on the radar. It's just we gotta keep chipping away at it.
All right, good.
Hey guys, I'm curious about the information sharing. When with all these things develop and things continue to cascade, and when we start getting into payments and banks and all of the rest, is there information from private to public? Because we're not talking about that. So I wondered, because I get that if you don't have a relationship with private, you're probably not going to receive information. That's going to be critical to drive home to the states. So I'm curious as to whether anyone is even thinking about that. How, because it's really, you guys are, to me, kind of driving the exercise. Private is driving this exercise. How do you communicate with public is what I'm getting to, or what I'm trying to ease into. I mean, we're mentoring a lot of states, and I get asked about this a lot.
In that's regards to me, the food sector, or just in general?
I'm sorry. I'm talking about, like in our scenario here, what we're talking about, we don't have an expected time that, the power is going to be restored, or we're not sure, if we really have a handle on the cyber incursion, but we are, trying to continue on and make plans for long term. I mean, if we don't have an answer, if private is not sure exactly what their answer is, I mean, how does public get to know that stuff? Are you saying, I'm wondering if, how often do you communicate with the private side? I mean, is this something that, I don't know, you let the emergency management director know where you are? Is it something that's kind of in the process that happens? I mean, I'm genuinely asking.
Yeah. So for our members, they rely heavily on, not heavily, but they rely on kind of FMI, their associations. We've over the last probably 2 years, since 2017, and all the crazy hurricanes, natural disasters that's taken place, have inserted ourselves in the equation and has been that kind of middleman or that bridge between public and private. It's continuing to build our relationships by coming to things like these meetings, working closely with FEMA, working closely with other sectors. So if something were to happen, for instance, with we'll use California because that's an ongoing issue. I personally know, some companies out there. I'll kind of be that conduit. I will send a message, and also it's very much important for for the food sector, what they tend to do is when disaster hits is very heads down, and they're just kind of siloed and focused.
Right.
So it's making sure it's specifically making sure in times when the blue sky days, it's kind of keeping up and letting them know who they should contact. With I talked to one of our members and just reaching out to him and had a discussion last week, and he hit home the importance of doing the stuff in the blue sky days, because if you're worried about fires and everything that's going on, having to get plugged into all other stuff, he said he equated to it's like changing engines mid-flight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the really importance of hammering home the who's, what, where's, how's prior to it. It's doing the exercises that all hands are doing. It's getting them plugged in, figuring out if this were happen, who is your person, how do you contact them, and just that ongoing relationship. And even with everything goes on the government side, it's continuing to check in. Is that person still your person? It's just stuff like that. So it's just it's a lot of it is just pre-planning, because once something happens, it's just head down, focus.
Yeah,
and
it's too late.
Yeah, it's too late.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I guess I just, and I appreciate you explaining. My concern always becomes whenever anything happens and I'm trying to support another state. Typically, what I find out is they've got no connection really with the private side. For whatever reason, they don't have that partnership, and they're not getting key information. And I guess I think it's easy to say, hey, we're connecting in at the federal level for a private company to say that. The only concern is there are going to be certain needs that are operational that can only be handled at the state. So, for instance, if your food guys, the food guys are trying to get up, if they got backup generator power, they're trying to continue operating in as much as they can, especially if they've got supply chain, they got supply flow. But if the FDA or some other group is trying to come through the state, because that's the way they would have to come, and set up pods that are going to impact the groceries' ability to stand up, that's only something that's going to be stopped at the state level, cannot be handled at the federal level. So the things like that I get concerned about.
Oh yeah, and the most important, we tell all our members, the most important relationships they have is their state relationships. It's their local. It also, as we said, all disasters are local disasters. So it starts there and then building up. And some of the issues that some of our members have is that they work in multiple states. So it's with the transportation, as Doug and I were kind of nodding our head when he was talking about if there's something in Florida and you're trying to get trucks through, it's kind of getting that, working with each and every state. But it starts at the local level, and we tell them that's you should know you work with your county before you're talking on the federal level, because a lot of it does rely on the states.
Okay. Persia, I think we're done. We've covered through the agenda here. Hang on a second. Let me double check here. We'll come back and circle back on some of these. Before we go, though, I wanted to kind of agree on the next step. My thinking is that we recircle this with the state liaison committee and work this from their perspective with Laura, maybe a couple others. I think that'll refine the mind map a little bit further. That's my thought. I mean, give me your input.
No, I agree. I think we can polish a few places with the state liaisons on, because they'll think of things like the question I just asked, where some of them don't know, they don't even know if private sector will be willing to speak to them if they don't have those partnerships. So I think that's going to be critical for them. Okay.
Then I think our next step from that would be to regroup back with this group. Remote webinar is fine. We could do it on a Friday call on a SISE work group. Probably the simplest one. We ever get that scheduled. Okay. And we could do that in, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks. And then we probably need to have another, what are your thoughts? I mean, we're going to have this thing at least ready for a prototype. I'd like to do something virtual if we can for the end of the year, first one. I mean, it'll be rough and it won't be pretty, I'm sure, but at least we can get something.
Wow.
When I say a dry run, 6, 8, 10 people max, right? I'm thinking really rough dry run. Otherwise, if we don't do something before the end of the year, once Thanksgiving hits, we're going to be back refreshing. What do we work on? You're going to be, we're going to forget all about it. And I'm okay to push it in January. I just thought we'd do some tests. We won't have all the products done, but at least we can look at the template scenario via PowerPoint slide or something.
So, like mid-December?
Yeah, I think the template is going to be a PowerPoint slide deck to start with. I think that's the simple, allows us to edit it, and we can create it fairly quickly. Anyway, my question is, do we think we ought to do our first dry run, very rough walkthrough of the current state of the template in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, virtually, webinar for an hour?
Okay. Wait, I'm looking at my calendar. Sorry, hang on.
Okay.
So we're talking about like right after Thanksgiving time frame.
Yeah. I'm thinking sometime in December, early December.
Okay.
And again, we can do that on a SISE call too. I mean, I figure why create new dates? We'll just put it on the agenda and we'll do a walkthrough.
Tom, I agree. It's a good idea to put a stake in the ground.
Yeah.
The stake may get knocked over, but at least we'll have something to shoot for. If we're not careful, we'll be here late January.
Oh yeah, it'll get away from.
We'll get into Thanksgiving, and into the holidays, and the New Year.
Yeah. Okay. Another comment? Okay.
From the EI's perspective, we have a pretty big planning meeting in the first week of December, so if we could avoid that the first week of December, that would be great.
Well, thank you. We do these SISE calls Friday mornings at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Like every week. So let's see. Maybe we can pick a date so when we leave we can. So if we're looking at, we can do the 6th, 13th, 20th, or 27th is out. 6, 13, 20. Persia, any of those dates good for you?
Not the 13th, but the 6th and 20th.
6 works. I mean, it's not going to be pretty, but as long as we have it on the calendar, let's do it on the 6th.
Okay.
All right. So, SISE cyber use case. I'll just put a placeholder in there. We'll put it on the agenda for the 6th. Got it. All right. And today's the 5th. Why don't we try to put this? We could circle back not this Friday, but next Friday, and have a discussion with the SISE work group. I'll put it on the agenda.
Sounds good to me, Tom.
Okay, because on the 22nd we have Marriott coming on to talk about lodging. All right, good. Okay, next steps. Let's see. So what did I say? The 12/6 dry run webinar call. What was that? What was it again? 12. I lost my place here. That's dry run is 12/6. Uh, 15. $11:15. All right, and then I'll talk to you, Persia, when we can get on the agenda for. I mean, we could do it next Tuesday if Laura's available. But I'll check with Laura. Okay.
Okay.
And then the last date is the potential live TTX. April, May, June, July. We don't need to anchor a date. I'm just trying to think of time of year.
I like that middle of hurricane season, but I like that kind of because we usually have a million things scheduled leading up to hurricane season, and then everything drops off June the 1st.
Yeah.
That's usually what happens, and so
Is that right?
Early in hurricane season, I'd be good with that.
Pat, is there a date that we could leverage that's already in place, maybe with EEI, and piggyback onto that? I'm trying to piggyback on if there's an existing meeting, we know utilities, whether they're going to be there. Maybe there's something we do. I always try to leverage meetings versus create a new one if we can.
You mean like our annual convention or something?
Something, you bring a lot of guys to Washington for the NRE planning. I'm just looking at piggybacking because if we're going to do the live one, we want to have maybe half a dozen utilities, DHS, FEMA, the comms, the fuel, food. You know what I mean?
Well, the NRE tabletop is February 12th and 13th, and the functional exercise is May 28th and 29th.
Right.
So that's
Persia, how's May for you? Either down there or up here.
Is there an NLE this year?
I said earlier that May is not a real good.
Oh, May's not a good month. I thought we could work around it. Okay. Sounds like June.
June's better.
Okay. Yeah. And we can do it here in DC, and Persia, we just fly you up, or we do it down there. I'm game. I think optics-wise, it'd be far better to do it at an EOC at a state. I think that would be much no disrespect to DC facilities, but I just think. Okay. Well, we could talk about that, but you're thinking maybe June, Persia, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, and I can check our schedules, and I can get start looking at the reservations we need for a situation room here. We were going to do it here at the EOC.
Okay, perfect.
And it's just Region 4 we're focused in on?
I don't think so, no. I don't think we're going to look at regions. We're just going to pick companies. Let's say this. I will invite all 6 of the SISE work group states, which is Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. So it's 3 and 4.
Okay.
Right.
Now, I will suggest something if I can. Now,
okay.
FEMA Region 4, the private-public partnership meeting is looking like they're asking me to host that, and that's looking like April. I'm just saying that if we combine that meeting with ours, like right after a one-day event, the wonderful thing about that is I could probably have a lot of my state counterparts here.
That's a great idea. So you're saying piggyback. You're saying piggyback on that one, and that's when?
It's supposed to be. I believe it's end of April, 2020, and I'll have to. I'll look at the actual dates. I don't have it in front of me, but if we piggyback on that, like one day, say at the end of that conference, which I believe is a day and a half or 2-day conference, I could have a lot of my state counterparts here. Florida would be here, South Carolina, but all of them would be invited. Kentucky, all of the Region 4, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi.
That's a great idea if it would work out.
So it's something to consider. It's something to consider, and I could probably get a number of other outside of region partners of mine, like Abby in California, my counterpart out there. If she's not, super crazy busy then in April.
Okay. Well, let's
check states that we want.
I think piggybacking on that would be helpful. Certainly easier for you. Let's pencil that in, and that's in April, right?
That's right, and
we can discuss the dates. Okay, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to wrap up here. So, Persia, I'll give you. Laura had to catch a plane, but any final thoughts, Persia?
No, Tom,
from your perspective.
Well, I'm really happy with how things went today. I think a lot of great, amazing input, and really taking this a lot higher than I could have, and I think we're going to get some good perspectives. And man, I'm excited about it.
Okay, excellent. Kent, I'll give you a last word here as chair. I think productive, pretty good session today, right?
Yeah. Excellent working discussion on the exercise, and I am always a huge fan of bringing people together and exercising. It amazes me how many items we find to refine and improve our own program every time we go through an event or a major exercise, and I see this as, an X factor of that kind of learning opportunity. So looking forward to it, Tom.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, we are officially have checked the cyber use case box Greg and I've been talking about for a year. I'm very happy, very excited. And of course, the planning is the best part of the whole thing, right? I always enjoy the planning and the perspective. So thank you all for attending remotely and in the room. Thanks to EI for letting us borrow the room. I'm just so grateful for that. So thank you all. We'll end here 15 minutes early at least. Have a great afternoon, and stay tuned. We'll be staying on top of this one as we go forward. Thank you all, and this will conclude our webinar and meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.